The Shadowpine Forest had claimed 17 lives in the past decade. Hunters who ventured too deep, campers who ignored the warnings, travelers who thought the stories were just legends meant to scare children. The trees themselves seemed to whisper a single truth: turn back, or never leave. But Eleanor Garza had nowhere else to go, and when exhaustion finally pulled her into sleep beneath the ancient pines, she had no idea that golden eyes watched from the darkness. No idea that the most dangerous predator in the forest had found her. No idea that he had already decided she was his. The Alpha King never shared what belonged to him, and she had just collapsed in the heart of his territory. If you're already hooked and want to see what happens when Eleanor wakes up to find the Alpha King standing over her, hit that like button now, because this story only gets more intense from here. Trust me. You won't want to miss a single moment of what comes next. Chapter 1: The Watch. The scent hit Kieran first. He'd been patrolling the northern border when the wind shifted, carrying something that made his wolf surge forward so violently he nearly lost control of his human form. Vanilla and wildflowers, mixed with something uniquely hers, a sweetness that spoke of summer mornings and promises his kind had long since stopped believing in. His claws extended before he could stop them, tearing through the tips of his fingers as his wolf roared. One word that changed everything: mate. No, Kieran growled aloud, forcing his beast back with every ounce of alpha command he possessed. Impossible. But his wolf didn't care about impossible. His wolf only cared that she was here, in their territory, and every instinct demanded he find her, claim her, make her theirs. Before another male caught her scent, Kieran ran. His beta, Simon Watts, called after him, but Kieran ignored it. Ignored everything except the pull that felt like a hook buried in his chest, reeling him toward something he'd stopped hoping for a century ago. His feet barely touched the ground as he moved through the forest with supernatural speed, following that intoxicating scent deeper into Shadowpine's heart. He found her in a clearing he knew well, the sacred ground where his ancestors had performed the ancient rituals, where the veil between worlds grew thin enough to feel the old ones watching. Of all the places she could have collapsed, she'd chosen the most protected spot in his entire territory. The forest had led her here. To him. She was curled on her side, one arm pillowed beneath her head, dark hair spilling across moss-covered ground like an ink stain against green velvet. Her clothes were torn, dirt-streaked, and he could see bruises blooming purple and yellow along her exposed forearm. She'd been running, hurt, afraid. His wolf snarled, demanding to know who had hurt her, demanding blood and vengeance. Kieran clenched his jaw so hard he heard his teeth crack. Control. He needed control. He moved closer, silent as death itself, until he could crouch beside her sleeping form. Up close, the mate bond pulled even stronger. His canines lengthened, aching to sink into the soft skin of her throat and mark her as his for all eternity. His hands trembled with the effort of keeping them to himself. She was human. Completely, utterly human. He could hear the steady rhythm of her heartbeat, slower than a wolf's. Could see the rise and fall of her chest with each breath. Could smell nothing but humanity and exhaustion, and that maddening sweetness that made him want to bury his face in her neck and never leave. This can't be happening, he whispered, more to himself than to her. But it was. The mate bond didn't make mistakes. In over 300 years of existence, Kieran had never felt anything close to this pull. He'd watched pack members find their mates, had seen the way they looked at each other with that mix of reverence and possession, and he'd accepted that such things weren't meant for him. Alpha Kings didn't get fairy tale endings. They got duty and responsibility, and the weight of an entire pack's survival on their shoulders. Until now, until her. She stirred in her sleep, a small sound of distress escaping her lips. Kieran's wolf whined, a pathetic noise he'd never made before in his life, desperate to comfort her, to protect her, to wrap himself around her and promise nothing would ever hurt her again. Instead, he stayed frozen in place, watching as she shifted positions. Her hand reached out, fingers curling into the moss, as though searching for something even in dreams. A strand of hair had fallen across her face, and Kieran found himself reaching out before he could stop himself. His fingers brushed her cheek, tucking the hair behind her ear. and the contact sent electricity racing up his arm. His wolf howled in triumph, flooding him with a possessiveness so intense it stole his breath. Mine, his wolf snarled. Ours. Claim her, mark her. Make her understand she belongs to us. She's human, Kieran forced out through gritted teeth, pulling his hand back like she'd burned him. She doesn't belong here. She's exactly where she belongs. The forest brought her to us. And that was the problem, wasn't it? The Shadowpine didn't make mistakes either. For a human to make it this deep, past all the wards and territorial markers, past the subtle magic that turned trespassers around until they found themselves back at the forest's edge, she'd have to be meant for this place. Meant for him. Kieran settled onto a low branch in a nearby tree, close enough to watch over her but far enough that he wouldn't do something stupid like curl around her sleeping form and refuse to let go. The moon rose higher, painting the clearing in silver light that made her skin glow like porcelain. Beautiful. She was devastatingly beautiful in the way humans could be all temporary, fragility, and fierce mortality. He catalogued every detail like a man memorizing scripture. The curve of her jaw, the faint freckles scattered across her nose, the way her lips parted slightly as she breathed, the small scar on her left eyebrow that spoke of some old injury. She looked young, maybe mid-20s, though humans age so differently it was hard to tell. Hours passed. Kieran didn't move. Simon found him sometime after midnight. His beta moved silently through the trees, joining him on the branch without a word. They sat in silence for long minutes before Simon finally spoke. That's her, isn't it? The scent that made you run like the devil himself was chasing you. Yes, she's human. I know. The pack won't accept this, Kieran. You know they won't. Not after what happened with your father. I know. Kieran cut him off, his voice colder than he intended. I know exactly what the pack will say, what the council will demand, what the law states about human mates. Simon studied him for a long moment. But you're not going to send her away. It wasn't a question. Kieran's hands clenched into fists. The forest led her here, to the sacred ground. That means something. Or it means nothing except that she's a lost human who got lucky. Simon's voice was gentle, but firm. You can't build a future on maybe, Alpha. The pack needs certainty. Strength. Not a human Luna who'll die in the blink of an eye while you're left to rule alone for the next 2 centuries. Every word was truth. Every word was a knife between his ribs. Then what do you suggest? Kieran asked quietly. That I let her wake up alone and terrified in the middle of Shadowpine? That I send her back to whatever hell she was running from? Or maybe you think I should just kill her and end the temptation altogether? His wolf snarled at that last suggestion, rising so close to the surface that his eyes flashed gold in the darkness. Simon held up his hands in surrender. I'm not suggesting anything except that you think this through before you do something that can't be undone. Meet her. Talk to her. Find out what she's running from and help her if you can. But don't claim her, Kieran. Don't mark her. Because once you do, there's no going back, and the pack won't forgive you for choosing a human over them. She's my mate, Kieran said. And the word came out somewhere between reverence and agony. Do you have any idea what it feels like? Every instinct I have is screaming at me to claim her right now. To bite her and mark her and make damn sure every male for 100 miles knows she's taken. I'm using every ounce of control I possess just to sit in this tree instead of doing exactly that. Simon's expression softened. I know. And I'm sorry. I truly am. But you're not just any wolf, brother. You're the Alpha King. Your choices affect all of us. Below them, Eleanor stirred again, this time with more urgency. Her heartbeat quickened, her breathing becoming shallow and rapid. A nightmare, Kieran realized. She was having a nightmare. He was off the branch and crouching beside her before Simon could stop him. Kieran, don't. But he was already reaching for her, one hand hovering over her shoulder, torn between the need to wake her and the knowledge that touching her again would make everything worse. She whimpered, a sound of pure terror that made his wolf go absolutely feral. Please, she whispered in her sleep. Please don't hurt them. I'll go. I'll leave. Just don't. Shh, Kieran murmured, finally giving in and placing his hand on her shoulder. The contact sent that same electric shock through him, but he forced himself to focus on her distress instead of his need. "You're safe. Whatever you're dreaming, it's not real. You're safe." His voice must have reached her through the nightmare because she calmed almost immediately, her breathing evening out, her features relaxing. But she didn't wake. Instead, she rolled toward him in her sleep, her hand coming up to rest over his where it touched her shoulder. The gesture was so trusting, so unconsciously affectionate, that Kieran's heart clenched painfully in his chest. "Kieran," Simon said warningly from above. "Step away." He absolutely should. But Eleanor's eyes were fluttering open, consciousness returning in slow degrees. And Kieran found himself frozen in place, caught between his wolf's demands and his better judgment, unable to do anything except watch as she registered his presence. Her eyes were brown, deep, warm brown, like rich earth after rain. They widened as they focused on him, and he saw the exact moment fear replaced confusion. She screamed. The sound shattered the night's peace, sending birds exploding from nearby trees and small creatures scurrying for cover. Eleanor scrambled backward, her hand leaving his, terror written across every line of her face. "Stay back," she gasped, reaching blindly for something, anything to use as a weapon. Her fingers closed around a fallen branch. "I don't want trouble. I'm leaving. I'm leaving right now. Just peace," Kieran said, raising his hands in what he hoped was a non-threatening gesture, even as his wolf howled at her fear. "I'm not going to hurt you. There's a man in the forest in the middle of the night," she said, her voice shaking but her grip on the branch steady. "That's literally the beginning of every horror story ever written. So forgive me if I don't take your word for it." Despite everything, Kieran felt his lips twitch toward a smile, terrified but sarcastic. His mate had claws of her own, it seemed. "You're on my land," he said carefully. "I heard someone in the forest and came to investigate. You're lucky it was me who found you, and not something worse." "Something worse than a strange man?" She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "What exactly roams these woods that's worse than that?" "Wolves," his beast supplied helpfully. "Worse wolves. Rogues who would tear her apart. Rival packs who would use her against us. Things you don't want to meet?" Kieran said instead. "How did you get this deep into Shadowpine? There are warnings posted everywhere. Most people turn back long before reaching this area." "I didn't see any warnings." Eleanor's grip on her makeshift weapon didn't loosen, but some of the stark terror had faded from her eyes. "I was just walking, and I got turned around, and by the time I realized how far I'd gone, it was getting dark and I was too tired to make it back." A lie. Or at least, not the whole truth. Kieran could hear it in her heartbeat, could smell the spike of anxiety that accompanied her words. But he didn't call her on it. Whatever she was running from had hurt her badly enough to leave bruises. She'd earned her secrets. "What's your name?" he asked instead. She hesitated, clearly weighing whether giving him that information was a good idea. "Eleanor. Just her first name. Fair enough." "I'm Kieran." He kept his voice soft, non-threatening, the same tone he'd used to approach a spooked deer. "And I promise you, Eleanor, I mean you no harm. But you're right that these woods aren't safe. Especially at night. Will you let me help you?" "Help me how?" "My home isn't far from here. You can rest there safely, get cleaned up, eat something. In the morning I'll help you get back to civilization." The words tasted like ash in his mouth. The last thing his wolf wanted was to send her away. But Simon was right. He needed to think this through. Needed to figure out what to do before he made choices that would affect his entire pack. Eleanor studied him with those earth-brown eyes, and Kieran forced himself to stay still under her scrutiny, to let her see that he was telling the truth, even as everything in him screamed to close the distance between them. "Why would you help a stranger?" she asked finally. "Because you're my mate. Because the forest led you to me. Because every instinct I possess says you're mine to protect and cherish and claim. Because you need help," he said instead. "And because I can." The branch lowered, just slightly. "You promise you're not some serial killer waiting to add me to your collection?" "I promise." Another long moment of consideration. Then Eleanor slowly stood, wincing as she put weight on her left leg. Injured, Kieran realized, his wolf snarling at the evidence of her pain, Not badly, but enough to cause discomfort. Okay, she said quietly. Thank you. Thank you. Kieran rose as well, careful to keep distance between them even as his wolf demanded he sweep her into his arms and carry her to safety. Can you walk? I think so. But she swayed slightly, exhaustion and hunger catching up with her now that the adrenaline was fading. He moved without thinking, catching her elbow to steady her. The contact sent sparks racing up his arm, and he saw her eyes widen, felt her sharp intake of breath. She'd felt it too. The connection. The pull. What was that? She whispered. Static electricity. Kieran lied, even as his wolf howled in protest at the denial. The forest air gets charged sometimes. She didn't look convinced, but she was too tired to argue. Your house is really nearby? Close enough. He glanced up at the tree where Simon still watched with concern written across his features. His beta shook his head slowly, a warning and a plea. Kieran ignored it. Come on. Let's get you somewhere safe. As he led Eleanor through the moonlit forest, her hand still in his to steady her uneven steps, Kieran tried to ignore the voice in his head that whispered he was making the biggest mistake of his very long life, or maybe the best decision he'd ever made. He honestly couldn't tell which. Chapter 2. The Sanctuary. The walk through Shadowpine at night should have terrified Eleanor more than it did. Every shadow could hide a predator. Every rustling branch could signal danger. But somehow, with Kieran's hand wrapped around hers, steadying her limping steps, she felt safer than she had in months. Which was insane. She'd just met this man. He was a complete stranger who'd appeared out of nowhere in the middle of a forest known for making people disappear. Every survival instinct she possessed should be screaming at her to run. Instead, all she could focus on was the warmth of his palm against hers, and the strange electricity that seemed to dance across her skin wherever they touched. How much farther? She asked, partially because she wanted to know, and partially because the silence between them felt too heavy with something she couldn't name. Just ahead, Kieran replied, his voice a deep rumble that seemed to resonate in her chest. Another few minutes. Eleanor risked a glance at him as they walked. Moonlight filtered through the canopy above, illuminating his profile in silver. He was tall, easily over 6 feet, with broad shoulders and a build that suggested he spent a lot of time doing physical labor. His dark hair was slightly too long, curling at his collar, and even in profile she could see the sharp cut of his jawline. Handsome didn't quite cover it. He was magnetic in a way that made her want to keep looking even when she knew she shouldn't. You live in the forest? She asked, forcing her attention back to the path ahead. In a manner of speaking. He helped her over a fallen log, his other hand coming to rest briefly on her lower back. Even through her torn jacket, she felt that same spark of electricity. My family has owned this land for generations. We prefer the privacy. Must get lonely. Something flickered across his face, an emotion too quick for her to read. Sometimes, though I'm rarely truly alone. My extended family lives nearby. We're a close-knit group. The trees began to thin ahead, and Eleanor caught her first glimpse of lights through the branches. But as they emerged into a clearing, she stopped dead in her tracks, her breath catching in her throat. She'd expected a cabin, maybe a small house at most. What stood before her looked like something out of a fantasy novel. The structure was massive, built from stone and timber that seemed to grow organically from the forest floor. Multiple levels rose toward the sky, connected by sweeping staircases and wraparound balconies. Warm light glowed from dozens of windows, and she could see the flicker of what looked like a massive fireplace through the main entrance. You call this a house? Eleanor breathed. Kieran had the grace to look slightly sheepish. It's been in my family a long time. We've added to it over the years. This isn't a house. This is an estate. A compound. She turned to look at him with new wariness. Who are you? Really? Before he could answer, the front door burst open, and a man stepped out onto the porch. He was slightly shorter than Kieran, but no less imposing, with sandy hair and eyes that seemed to glow amber in the lamplight. The same man she'd glimpsed in the tree earlier, she realized. He'd been watching them the whole time. Kieran, the man said, his voice tight with warning. A word. Now. Simon, this is Eleanor. Kieran said calmly, though Eleanor felt his hand tighten slightly around hers. She needs food and rest. We can discuss whatever you need to discuss after she's settled. Simon's eyes flicked to their joined hands, and something passed over his face that looked almost like concern. Alpha, please. This isn't. After, Kieran repeated. And there was steel beneath the word. An authority that made Simon snap his mouth shut and dip his head slightly in what looked like submission. Alpha? What kind of nickname was that? Come on, Kieran said to her, gentler now. Let's get you inside. The interior of the house was even more impressive than the exterior. Vaulted ceilings soared overhead, supported by beams that looked hand-carved. A massive stone fireplace dominated one wall, flames crackling cheerfully within. Comfortable furniture in earth tones filled the space, and everywhere Eleanor looked, she saw details that spoke of wealth and careful maintenance. But more striking than the house itself were the people. They appeared from various doorways in the upstairs balcony, drawn by the commotion. A dozen at least, maybe more, all watching with varying expressions of shock and curiosity as Kieran led Eleanor through the main room. She noticed they were all young and impossibly attractive, moving with a fluid grace that seemed almost inhuman, and every single one of them was staring at her like she'd grown a second head. Everyone, return to what you were doing, Kieran said, not quite raising his voice but somehow projecting it to reach every corner of the space. We have a guest who needs privacy and rest. They scattered immediately, though Eleanor caught whispered conversations and backward glances as they dispersed. I'm sorry about that, Kieran said, leading her toward a staircase. My family isn't used to visitors. Your family? Eleanor repeated slowly. All of them? Extended family. I told you we were close-knit. He guided her up the stairs and down a hallway lined with doors. Here. This room should have everything you need. He opened a door to reveal a bedroom that was larger than her entire apartment back home. A massive four-poster bed dominated the space, covered in what looked like hand-stitched quilts. A fireplace was already lit, casting warm light across hardwood floors. Through an open doorway, she could see a bathroom with a clawfoot tub that looked big enough to swim in. This is too much, Eleanor said, overwhelmed. I can't. I mean, I'm just some random person you found in the woods. You don't have to. You're hurt and exhausted, Kieran interrupted gently. And you're under my protection now. That means I provide for your needs. It's not charity, Eleanor. He paused, seeming to search for words. It's just what we do. What I do. She wanted to argue. Wanted to maintain some shred of independence. But her leg was throbbing, her head was pounding, and the bed looked so soft she could cry. Thank you, she said quietly. Really. I don't know how I'll ever repay you for this. Something flashed in his eyes, dark and intense, and gone too quickly to interpret. You don't owe me anything. Get cleaned up. There are clothes in the wardrobe that should fit you. I'll have food sent up. He turned to leave, and Eleanor felt a sudden, irrational panic at the thought of him going, which was ridiculous. She'd known him for all of an hour. But something about his presence made her feel safe in a way she hadn't felt since before everything fell apart. Kieran? She called as he reached the door. He turned back, and the way he looked at her made her breath catch, like she was something precious, something worth protecting, something that mattered. Will I see you in the morning? His expression softened into something that might have been a smile if it reached his eyes. You'll see me before then. I'm not leaving you alone in a strange place. I'll be right outside if you need anything. Outside the door? Close enough to hear if you call. He paused, then added quietly. You're safe here, Eleanor. I give you my word. Nothing. And no one will hurt you while you're under my roof. The certainty in his voice should have sounded arrogant. Instead, it sounded like a vow. After he left, Eleanor stood in the middle of the too-large bedroom, trying to process everything that had happened in the last few hours. She'd fled her apartment with nothing but the clothes on her back and the money she'd managed to grab from her emergency stash. She'd driven until her car ran out of gas, then walked until exhaustion took her legs out from under her. She'd expected to wake up dead or worse. Instead, She'd woken up to a man with eyes like molten gold and a touch that made her skin sing. A man who lived in a mansion in the middle of the forest with a dozen impossibly beautiful people who called him Alpha and scattered when he spoke. Eleanor moved to the bathroom and caught sight of herself in the mirror above the sink. She looked like hell. Her dark hair was a tangled mess, full of leaves and twigs. Dirt streaked her face and neck. The bruises on her arm had darkened to deep purple, and there were scratches she didn't remember getting running down her forearms. The cut on her temple from where Derek had shoved her into the wall had finally stopped bleeding, but dried blood matted her hair above her right ear. Derek. Just thinking his name made her stomach twist with a mixture of fear and rage. She'd been so stupid, so blind to what he really was until it was almost too late. The charming boyfriend who slowly became possessive. The concern that became control. The love that turned into obsession. When she'd finally worked up the courage to leave, when she'd told him it was over, he'd shown her exactly how dangerous he really was. The bruises were from him. The fear was because of him. And the reason she'd run so far, so desperately, was because he'd looked at her with eyes full of murder and promised that if he couldn't have her, no one would. Eleanor turned away from the mirror, unable to look at the evidence of her poor judgment any longer. She ran a bath, making the water as hot as she could stand, and sank into it with a groan of relief. The heat soothed her aching muscles and the throbbing in her leg, washing away the dirt and fear and exhaustion of the past 3 days. She found soap that smelled like cedar and something else she couldn't quite identify, something wild and forest-like. It reminded her of Kieran, she realized, and felt her cheeks heat at the thought. What was wrong with her? She'd just escaped one dangerous man. The last thing she should be doing was thinking about another man, even one who seemed kind. Especially one who seemed kind. Derek had seemed kind at first, too. But even as she told herself that, Eleanor knew it wasn't the same. Kieran's kindness didn't feel performative, didn't come with strings or expectations. It felt genuine in a way that made her want to trust him, even though she knew better. After her bath, she found the wardrobe Kieran had mentioned. Inside were clothes that looked brand new, all in her size. Jeans, soft cotton shirts, sweaters that looked hand-knitted. She chose a simple shirt and sleep pants, relishing the feeling of clean fabric against clean skin. A knock at the door made her jump. "Come in," she called, expecting Kieran. Instead, a woman entered carrying a tray laden with food. She was stunning, weren't they all? With copper-colored hair and bright green eyes. She moved with that same liquid grace Eleanor had noticed in the others, setting the tray down on a small table by the window. "Hi," the woman said with a warm smile. "I'm Stacy Meyer. Kieran asked me to bring you something to eat." "Thank you," Eleanor said, her stomach growling at the smell of hot food. "That's really kind of you." Stacy studied her with open curiosity. "You're the first human Kieran's brought home in." She paused, seeming to calculate. "Ever. Actually, we're all pretty curious about you." Human. The word choice was strange, but Eleanor was too tired to analyze it. "I'm not anyone special, just someone who got lost in the wrong place at the wrong time." "I don't think Kieran would agree with that assessment," Stacy said with a knowing smile. "The way he looks at you." She cut herself off, shaking her head. "Never mind. I'm talking too much. That's what Simon always says. Eat before it gets cold. If you need anything else, just open the door and call out. Someone will hear you." After Stacy left, Eleanor fell on the food like she hadn't eaten in days. Because she hadn't. There was roasted meat she couldn't identify but tasted incredible, vegetables seasoned with herbs, fresh bread that was still warm, and some kind of berry pie for dessert. She ate until she was uncomfortably full, then climbed into the massive bed. The sheets were soft as clouds, and the pillows smelled faintly of cedar of Kieran. Eleanor told herself she was imagining it, that there was no reason this particular bedroom would smell like him. But as she drifted towards sleep, warm and safe and full for the first time in what felt like forever, she couldn't shake the feeling that everything had changed tonight, that walking into Shadowpine Forest and collapsing in that clearing hadn't been random chance. It had felt like destiny. Through the door, in the hallway beyond, Kieran stood with his back against the wall and his eyes closed, listening to Eleanor's heartbeat slow into the steady rhythm of sleep. His wolf paced restlessly, demanding to be closer, to be in that room with her, to curl around her and guard her through the night. "This is a mistake," Simon said quietly, appearing at the top of the stairs. "You know it is." "I know what you think," Kieran replied without opening his eyes. "But the decision is made. She stays. At least until she's healed and rested. At least until I know she's safe from whatever she was running from." "And then what? You let her go? You really think you can do that now that you've scented her, touched her, brought her into your home?" Simon moved closer, lowering his voice. "Kieran, the council meets tomorrow night. They're going to demand to know why there's a human in the Alpha's residence. What are you going to tell them? The truth. That I found an injured woman on our territory and offered shelter. That's well within my rights and obligations as Alpha. And when they smell the mate bond on you, when they realize what she is to you, what then?" Kieran finally opened his eyes, meeting his beta's concerned gaze. "Then I deal with it. Like I deal with everything else. They won't accept her, brother. You know the laws. Human mates haven't been allowed in over 2 centuries, not since. I know the history." Kieran snapped, then immediately softened his tone. "I know what happened with my father. I know the price he paid for choosing a human mate. But Eleanor is different. How? How is she different from any other human? She made it to the sacred ground, past all the wards, all the protections. The forest led her there, Simon. That has to mean something." Simon was quiet for a long moment. "Or it means she has fey blood, dormant maybe, but enough to get past the wards. You know that's possible." Hope flared in Kieran's chest before he could stop it. If Eleanor had supernatural blood, even diluted, the pack might accept her. The council might allow the bond. It would change everything. "We should test her," Simon continued. "Daisy could." "No." Kieran's voice was flat, final. "We're not testing her. We're not treating her like some experiment or problem to be solved. She's a guest under my protection, and she'll be treated with respect, even if it costs you your position, even if it splits the pack, even then." Simon's expression shifted into something like resignation. "You've already decided, haven't you? You're going to claim her regardless of what the council says, regardless of the consequences." Kieran didn't answer immediately. He thought of Eleanor's face when he'd found her exhausted and afraid but still defiant. Thought of the way her hand had fit in his like it was made to be there. Thought of the pull that even now had him standing outside her door like a lovesick fool instead of in his own bed. "I'm going to do whatever it takes to keep her safe," he said finally. "Beyond that, I don't know. But I won't make any decisions without talking to her first, without giving her a choice. And if she chooses to leave?" The question hit like a physical blow. Kieran's wolf snarled at the mere suggestion, but he forced himself to consider it. What if Eleanor woke up tomorrow and decided she wanted nothing to do with him? What if she walked away without ever knowing what they could be to each other? "Then I let her go," Kieran said, and the words tasted like ash. "I don't claim someone who doesn't want to be claimed. I'm not that kind of alpha." Simon nodded slowly. "I hope you know what you're doing, brother. For all our sakes." After Simon left, Kieran stayed in the hallway, listening to Eleanor breathe on the other side of the door. His wolf was quieter now, soothed by her proximity, by the knowledge that she was safe and warm and under his protection. Tomorrow would bring complications. The council, the pack, questions he didn't have answers for yet. But tonight, for just this one night, he could stand guard over his mate and pretend that nothing else mattered. Inside the room, Eleanor dreamed of golden eyes and electric touches, of a man who promised safety and made her feel things she'd thought were lost forever. And in the forest beyond, where shadows moved and ancient magic stirred, the shadow pine whispered its approval of the bond forming beneath its branches. Chapter 3. Pack Resistance. Eleanor woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the smell of coffee. For a disorienting moment, she had no idea where she was. Then memory returned in a rush, the forest, Kieran, the impossible mansion hidden in the trees. She sat up slowly, testing her injured leg. The pain had diminished to a dull ache, much better than yesterday. The bruises on her arm looked worse in daylight, but they didn't hurt as much. Small mercies. A soft knock at the door made her pull the blankets up reflexively. Yes? It's Stacy. I brought coffee and breakfast if you're awake. Eleanor relaxed slightly. Come in. Stacy entered with another laden tray, this one holding a carafe of coffee, a plate of eggs and bacon, fresh fruit, and what looked like homemade pastries. She set it down with a smile that seemed genuine. Kieran wanted to bring this himself, but the council called an emergency meeting. He said to tell you he'll be back as soon as he can, and that you should make yourself at home. Stacy poured coffee into a mug without asking. How do you take it? Just black, thank you. Eleanor accepted the mug gratefully, wrapping her hands around its warmth. Emergency meeting? Is everything okay? Stacy's smile faltered slightly. Everything's fine. Just pack business. Nothing for you to worry about. There was that word again. Pack. Like they were wolves or something. Stacy, can I ask you something? Of course. What is this place really? And who are all these people? Kieran said extended family. But there are so many of you. And the way everyone acts around him. She trailed off, not sure how to articulate the strange hierarchy she'd sensed last night. Stacy's expression became carefully neutral. It's complicated. And honestly, I think Kieran should be the one to explain it. It's not really my place. Which only made Eleanor more curious and more uneasy. Are you all in some kind of cult? That startled a laugh out of Stacy. God, no. Nothing like that. We're just a very old, very traditional family. Kieran's the head of the household, which is why everyone defers to him. But I promise you, Eleanor, you're safe here. Whatever else you might think about us, that much is absolutely true. Before Eleanor could press further, raised voices drifted up from somewhere below. Angry voices, though she couldn't make out the words. Stacy's expression tightened. I should go. Take your time with breakfast. If you want to explore, feel free. Just maybe avoid the East Wing for now, that's where the meeting is happening. After Stacy left, Eleanor ate slowly while trying to decide what to do. Part of her said she should leave as soon as possible. Whatever was going on here, it was clearly complicated, and she had enough complications in her life already. But another part, a louder part, wanted to stay. Wanted to see Kieran again and figure out what this strange connection between them was. And practically speaking, she had no car, no money, beyond what was in her pocket, and no idea where the nearest town even was. She was stuck here at least until she could figure out her next move. Eleanor finished eating and decided to explore. If she was going to be trapped in a mysterious mansion, she might as well see what she was dealing with. The house was even larger than she'd realized. She found a library that could rival some universities, shelves stretching from floor to ceiling and filled with books that looked ancient. A kitchen that was clearly designed to feed dozens of people. A training room with equipment she'd never seen before, weights and punching bags and weapons mounted on the walls like decorations. Weapons. Swords and knives and things she couldn't even name. What kind of family kept an armory in their house? She was studying a particularly wicked-looking blade when a voice behind her made her jump. Beautiful, isn't it? Forged in 1847 by a master craftsman in Norway. Eleanor spun to find a man watching her from the doorway. He was older than most of the others she'd seen, or at least he looked older, with silver threading through his dark hair. His eyes were ice blue and calculating, studying her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. I'm sorry, she said. I didn't mean to intrude. Stacy said I could explore. Stacy Meyer has always been too welcoming for her own good. The man moved into the room with measured steps. I'm Franklin Singh. I serve as an advisor to Kieran, Eleanor Garza. Though I guess you already know that. Indeed. The whole pack knows about the human our Alpha brought home in the middle of the night. His tone made it clear what he thought of that decision. Tell me, Eleanor, what exactly are your intentions toward Kieran? The question was so unexpected she actually laughed. My intentions? I don't have any intentions. I got lost in the forest, he helped me. That's it. Is it? Franklin moved closer, and Eleanor found herself backing up instinctively until her shoulders hit the wall. He didn't touch her, but he didn't need to. His presence alone was threatening. Because, from where I stand, it looks like you've managed to bewitch our Alpha in less than 12 hours. He's refusing to send you away, refusing to even consider what your presence here means for the rest of us. I don't know what you're talking about. I haven't bewitched anyone, haven't you? His eyes bored into hers. Kieran has ruled this pack for 73 years without once bringing a human onto our territory. And suddenly you appear, and he's acting like a lovesick. Franklin. Kieran's voice cut through the air like a blade. Step away from her. Now. Eleanor had never heard that tone from him before. Cold. Dangerous. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Franklin immediately took 3 steps back, his head dipping in what looked like submission. Alpha. I was simply introducing myself to our guest. You were intimidating her. Kieran crossed the room to stand between Eleanor and Franklin, his body language screaming protection. She's under my protection. That means she's off limits to your interrogations and suspicions. Am I clear? Crystal. Alpha. But Franklin's eyes remained cold as they flicked to Eleanor. My apologies if I made you uncomfortable, Miss Garza. I was merely concerned for my Alpha's well-being. Your concern is noted, Kieran said flatly, and dismissed. You're excused. Franklin. After Franklin left with one last lingering look that promised this conversation wasn't over, Kieran turned to Eleanor. The dangerous edge was gone from his expression, replaced by concern. Are you all right? Did he hurt you? No. Just scared me a little. Eleanor tried to laugh it off, but her hands were shaking. He really doesn't like me being here. Franklin doesn't like anything that disrupts his carefully ordered world. Kieran reached out as if to touch her, then seemed to think better of it and let his hand drop. I'm sorry. I should have warned you that not everyone would be welcoming. Stacy was nice. Stacy likes everyone. He smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. How are you feeling? Is your leg better? Much better. Whatever was in that food you fed me, it worked wonders. Eleanor studied his face, seeing the tension in his jaw, the tightness around his eyes. The meeting didn't go well, did it? Kieran's laugh was bitter. That obvious? You look like you want to hit something. Or someone. Perceptive. He ran a hand through his hair, making it stand up in ways that shouldn't be attractive but somehow were. The council wants to meet you. Tonight. They have questions about your presence here. What kind of questions? The kind I'd rather not answer. He finally met her eyes, and the intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. Eleanor, I need to tell you something. About this place. About me. About what we are. Her heart started beating faster. Okay, not here. Come with me. He led her through the house and out a back door she hadn't discovered yet. They walked in silence through manicured gardens until they reached a grove of trees that formed a natural circle. In the center was a small clearing with a stone bench worn smooth by time. Kieran sat, and after a moment's hesitation, Eleanor joined him. The morning sun filtered through the leaves above, dappling everything in gold and green. What I'm about to tell you, Kieran said slowly, you're going to think I'm insane. Given the last 24 hours, I'm prepared to believe almost anything. He smiled at that, but it faded quickly. My family isn't human, Eleanor. None of us are. We're werewolves. Shapeshifters. We can transform into wolves at will, and we've lived in this forest for over 300 years, hidden from the human world. Eleanor stared at him, waited for the punchline. When none came, she said carefully, werewolves. Yes. Like full moon, silver bullets, howling at the moon werewolves. Some of that is myth. We can shift whenever we want, not just during full moons. Silver doesn't kill us, though it does hurt more than other metals. And we don't howl at the moon, we howl to communicate with each other across distances. He was watching her carefully, gauging her reaction. You think I'm crazy? Eleanor opened her mouth, closed it, tried to organize her thoughts into something coherent. I think that would explain a lot, actually. The way everyone moves. The hierarchy. Why Franklin called everyone the pack. Why you all live together in the middle of nowhere. You believe me? I don't know, she admitted. It sounds impossible. But yesterday I would have said a man appearing out of nowhere to save me in the forest was impossible too. And here we are." Kieran held out his hand, palm up. "An offering. I can show you, if you want proof." Eleanor looked at his hand, thought about everything that could go wrong, thought about Derek and how she'd trusted him when she shouldn't have, thought about how every instinct she possessed said Kieran was different, that, despite everything, she could trust him. She placed her hand in his. The transformation was both slower and faster than she expected. One moment Kieran was sitting beside her, human and solid. The next, his form was blurring, shifting, bones and muscles rearranging themselves with sounds that should have been horrific but somehow weren't. And then there was a wolf. He was massive, easily the size of a small horse. His fur was deep black with silver highlights, and his eyes were the same molten gold she'd seen flash in Kieran's human gaze. He was the most beautiful and terrifying thing she'd ever seen. Eleanor's logical mind screamed at her to run, but she stayed frozen on the bench, staring at the wolf that had been a man seconds ago. The wolf Kieran took a slow step forward, then another, moving carefully, like he was approaching a spooked animal. He stopped just within reach and lowered his massive head. Eleanor's hand moved before her brain could catch up, reaching out to touch the soft fur between his ears. The wolf's eyes closed, and a sound that was almost like a purr rumbled from his chest. "You're real," Eleanor whispered. "This is real." Kieran shifted back to human form in another fluid transition, and suddenly her hand was in his hair instead of his fur. He caught her wrist gently, lowering her hand but not letting go. "I'm the Alpha King," he said quietly. "I lead a pack of over 300 wolves, scattered throughout this territory. The people you've met, Stacy, Simon, Franklin, they're all pack members. All wolves. And the reason Franklin is so hostile, the reason the council called an emergency meeting, is because I brought you here, a human, into the heart of our territory. Why is that such a big deal? Because it's forbidden. Has been for over 200 years. We've hidden ourselves from the human world for so long that contact with humans is considered too dangerous, too risky. Humans fear what they don't understand, and fear makes people do terrible things." His thumb stroked over her pulse point, and Eleanor wondered if he could feel how fast her heart was beating. "My father's mate was human. When the pack found out, they revolted, accused her of being a threat, demanded her exile. What happened? He chose her over the pack, left his position as alpha, and took her away to live in the human world. He died protecting her from hunters who'd learned what he was." The pain in Kieran's voice was raw, centuries old but still fresh. "I was young. I had to take over as alpha at barely 30 years old, and the first thing the council made me do was sign a decree forbidding human mates. To prove my loyalty to the pack over any personal desires." Eleanor's mind was reeling. "So, bringing me here breaks that decree, challenges everything I agreed to when I became alpha." He finally looked at her, and the vulnerability in his expression made her chest ache. "But I couldn't leave you in the forest, Eleanor. I couldn't send you away. Because..." He trailed off, seeming to struggle with the words. "Because what?" "Because you're my mate." The words hung in the air between them. Eleanor knew she should say something, but her mind had gone completely blank. "Wolves mate for life," Kieran continued, his voice rough. "When we meet our true mate, we know. Instantly. Undeniably. It's a pull that goes beyond logic or reason. It's written into our very souls." He squeezed her hand gently. "I knew the moment I caught your scent in the forest. My wolf knew, and every instinct I possess is screaming at me to claim you, to mark you, to make you mine in every way possible. That's why you watched over me all night," Eleanor said, understanding dawning. "Why you brought me here instead of taking me to the nearest town. Why you're risking so much. Yes, but I'm human. Yes, and I barely know you." "I know." He laughed, a sound full of self-deprecation. "Believe me, I know how insane this sounds. You don't have to feel what I feel. The mate bond doesn't work both ways, not for humans. For you, it would just be a strong attraction at most. You'd have to choose to love me, choose to accept this bond. It's not forced." Eleanor's head was spinning, 24 hours ago, she'd been running for her life from an abusive ex. Now she was sitting in a forest grove while a werewolf king told her she was his destined mate. "I need time," she said finally, "to process all of this, to figure out what I'm feeling. Because you're right, there is something between us. I felt it from the first moment. But I can't. I just escaped one nightmare, Kieran. I can't jump straight into something else without thinking it through." "Of course." He released her hand immediately, though she could see the effort it cost him. "Take all the time you need. You're welcome to stay here as long as you want. No pressure, no expectations. And the council meeting tonight?" His expression hardened. "I'll handle the council. They have no say in who I choose to offer sanctuary to. You're my guest and under my protection. That's the end of it." But Eleanor saw the worry beneath his confident words, saw the weight of leadership and impossible choices settling back onto his shoulders. "Can I come?" she asked impulsively. "To the meeting?" Kieran's eyes widened. "Eleanor, that's not necessary. It could be unpleasant. If they're going to talk about me, I should be there. I can speak for myself." She lifted her chin, channeling a courage she didn't quite feel. "Unless you don't want me there?" "I want nothing more than to keep you as far from pack politics as possible," Kieran admitted. "But if you're determined to face them, I won't stop you. Though I'm warning you now, some of what they say will be cruel. They'll say things designed to hurt you, to make you want to leave. Let them try." Eleanor stood, and Kieran rose with her. "I've been running for months from someone who told me I was worthless every chance he got. Your counsel can't possibly be worse than that." Something fierce and protective flashed in Kieran's eyes. "Who hurt you, Eleanor? Who are you running from?" She hadn't meant to say that much. Hadn't meant to reveal the wounds that were still too fresh to examine. "Someone who doesn't matter anymore. Someone I left behind. If he follows you here, he won't. He has no idea where I am. I made sure of it." She hoped that was true. Prayed it was true. "Can we go back to the house? I should probably prepare for this meeting if I'm going to face a room full of werewolves tonight." Kieran nodded slowly, clearly wanting to push the issue but respecting her boundaries. "This way." As they walked back through the gardens, Eleanor's mind raced with everything she'd learned. Werewolves were real. The man who'd saved her was their king. And apparently, she was his fated mate. It should have terrified her. Should have sent her running screaming into the forest. Instead, all she could think about was the way Kieran had looked at her when he'd said the words, "my mate," like she was something precious. Something worth fighting for. And despite everything, despite the impossibility of it all, Eleanor found herself wanting to fight too. Chapter 4, The Council. The council chamber was located in the East Wing, down a corridor lined with portraits of stern-faced men and women who Eleanor assumed were previous pack leaders. Their painted eyes seemed to follow her as she walked beside Kieran, and she resisted the urge to move closer to him for comfort. She'd changed into clothes. Stacy had brought her dark jeans and a deep green sweater that actually fit properly. Stacy had also offered to help with her hair, braiding it back from her face in a style that made her look more put together than she felt. "You don't have to do this," Kieran said for the third time as they approached a set of heavy wooden doors. "I can speak for you." "I know. But I want to be there." Eleanor smoothed down her sweater, trying to calm her nerves. "Besides, shouldn't they meet me before deciding whether I'm a threat?" "You could never be a threat." His voice was soft, but there was steel underneath. "And if anyone suggests otherwise, the meeting ends immediately." Simon was waiting outside the doors, his expression grim. "They're all here. Franklin has been stirring up trouble for the past hour, getting everyone worked up about tradition and security concerns." "Of course he has." Kieran's jaw tightened. "Remember, no matter what happens in there, I'm still Alpha. My word is law." "They know that," Simon said carefully. "But they're scared, Kieran. Change frightens them, especially after what happened with your father. You're asking them to accept something they've been taught to fear for 2 centuries. I'm not asking them to accept anything. I'm informing them that Eleanor is under my protection." End of discussion. Simon's eyes flicked to Eleanor, and she saw sympathy there. "Good luck," he said quietly. "Both of you." The council chamber was circular, with a high-domed ceiling painted with constellations Eleanor didn't recognize. Stone benches formed concentric rings around a central floor where she assumed the speaker stood. At least 30 wolves were already seated, ranging from young adults to elderly pack members whose silver hair spoke of ages she couldn't guess. All conversation stopped when Eleanor entered with Kieran. The weight of their stares was physical. Eleanor felt her skin prickle with awareness as dozens of predators assessed her with varying degrees of curiosity and hostility. She forced herself to keep her chin up and her shoulders back, refusing to show fear even as her heart hammered against her ribs. Kieran guided her to the center of the floor, his hand a warm, steady presence at the small of her back. He positioned himself slightly in front of her, protective but not hiding her from view. "Members of the council," Kieran began, his voice carrying easily through the chamber. "Thank you for gathering on such short notice. As you're all aware, we have a guest, Eleanor Garza, who sought shelter in our forest 2 nights ago. Sought shelter or trespassed." Franklin's voice rang out from the front row. "She's human, Alpha. She had no right to enter Shadowpine territory, much less make it all the way to the sacred grounds." "The forest let her through," Kieran replied calmly. "Every ward, every protection we've laid over centuries, none of them turned her away. That alone should tell you something." "It tells us she might have supernatural blood," another council member said. Eleanor recognized her as the woman she'd seen briefly last night, Daisy Knapp, if she remembered correctly. Dormant Fey heritage, perhaps. That would explain how she bypassed our defenses. "We could test her," Franklin suggested, leaning forward eagerly. "A simple blood ritual would reveal any non-human ancestry. If she has even a trace of supernatural lineage, the pack might consider—" "No," Kieran's voice cracked like a whip. "Eleanor is a guest, not a prisoner to be tested and examined. She owes us nothing, least of all her blood." "With respect, Alpha." Franklin stood, his ice-blue eyes hard. "She owes us an explanation. She appears in the middle of our territory, bypasses centuries of protective magic, and within hours has you breaking laws you yourself enacted. That's not coincidence. That's manipulation." Eleanor felt anger flash hot in her chest. Before Kieran could respond, she stepped forward. "I didn't manipulate anyone. I didn't even know werewolves were real until this morning. I was running from someone dangerous, I got lost, and I collapsed from exhaustion. That's it. There's no grand conspiracy, no supernatural plot. I'm just a human who got lucky." "Lucky," Franklin repeated, his tone making it clear what he thought of that explanation, or calculating. "Tell me, Miss Garza, what were you running from? Who's this dangerous person you mentioned?" "That's none of your business." "It's absolutely our business if you've led trouble to our doorstep." Franklin moved down from his seat, approaching the center floor. "For all we know, you're being hunted by other supernatural creatures. Or worse, by humans who know what we are. You could be putting the entire pack at risk." "Franklin." "That's enough," Kieran growled, but Franklin ignored him, focused entirely on Eleanor. "Who hurt you, girl? Those bruises didn't come from falling in the forest. Someone beat you. Someone you're afraid of. And now you've brought that fear here, to our safe haven, and expect us to just accept you with open arms?" "I said that's enough." Kieran's voice thundered through the chamber, and Eleanor felt power roll off him in waves. Every wolf in the room flinched, their heads dropping in automatic submission. Even Franklin took a step back, though resentment burned in his eyes. "Alpha," an elderly woman said from the upper rows, her voice carrying surprising strength. "Perhaps we should hear the girl's full story. If we're to make an informed decision about her presence, we need all the facts." Eleanor recognized the wisdom in the suggestion even as she hated the idea of sharing her trauma with a room full of strangers. But Kieran had been right, they would say cruel things. They would try to break her. She needed to show them she was stronger than they thought. "His name is Derek Chen," Eleanor said, and ignored Kieran's sharp intake of breath beside her. "We dated for 2 years. He seemed perfect at first, charming, attentive, everything I thought I wanted. But slowly, he became controlling. He needed to know where I was every minute, who I was with, what I was doing. And when I tried to pull away, he'd apologize and promise to change. and I'd believe him because I wanted to believe him. The chamber was silent except for her voice. 3 months ago, I told him it was over. That I wanted to leave. He put me in the hospital with a concussion and 3 broken ribs. Eleanor touched the scar on her temple unconsciously. The police couldn't hold him, his family has money and connections. When he got out, he told me that if I tried to leave again, he'd kill me. And I believed him because I'd seen what he was capable of. She took a breath, steadying herself. So I ran. I emptied my bank account, packed what I could carry, and I drove until my car ran out of gas. Then I walked until I couldn't walk anymore. I had no idea where I was or where I was going. I just knew I needed to get as far from him as possible. And you just happened to end up in werewolf territory? Franklin's skepticism was clear. I didn't happen to do anything. I was dying in that forest. If Kieran hadn't found me, I'd probably be dead right now. Eleanor turned to look at the council members, meeting as many eyes as she could. I'm not here to hurt anyone. I'm not here to expose you or manipulate you. I'm just trying to survive. That's all I've been trying to do for months. The elderly woman who'd spoken earlier nodded slowly. Thank you for your honesty, child. That took courage. She looked at Kieran. And what are your intentions, Alpha? How long do you plan to harbor this human? The question hung heavy in the air. Eleanor saw Kieran's jaw work, saw him weighing his words carefully. As long as she needs sanctuary, he said finally. And as long as she chooses to stay, that could be days, Franklin said. Or weeks. Or longer. Are we supposed to just accept a human living among us indefinitely? Yes. Kieran's voice was flat, brooking no argument. Eleanor is under my protection. That makes her pack business. And pack law dictates that any member can offer sanctuary to those in need. I'm exercising that right. But you're not just any member. Another council member called out. You're the Alpha. Your actions set precedent. If you harbor a human, others might think it's acceptable to form attachments to humans. To reveal ourselves. We've spent centuries hiding for good reason. I'm aware of the risks. Kieran replied. But I'm also aware that Eleanor made it past every defense we have. The forest itself guided her to the sacred grounds. That's not something we can ignore. So test her, Daisy suggested again. If she has supernatural blood, even a trace, the law allows for exceptions. She could potentially become pack if the bloodline is strong enough. Eleanor felt Kieran tense beside her. I said no testing. Why? Franklin's eyes narrowed. Unless you already know what the results would be. Unless you've already scented what she is to you. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Eleanor saw understanding dawn on several faces. Saw shock and horror and fascination ripple through the assembled wolves. She's your mate, Franklin breathed. That's why you won't send her away. That's why you're willing to risk everything. Kieran said nothing, which was answer enough. The chamber erupted. Voices overlapped in shock and anger and disbelief. Eleanor caught fragments, human mate, forbidden, just like his father, history repeating itself. Order. Simon's voice cut through the chaos. This is still a council meeting. Show your Alpha respect. Gradually, the noise died down, though the tension remained thick enough to choke on. Franklin was the first to speak, his voice deadly calm. Alpha Kieran, 73 years ago, you signed a decree forbidding human mates. You made it law. You promised the pack that you would never make the same mistake your father did. And now you stand before us with a human woman and expect us to simply accept that you're breaking your own law. I expect you to remember that I'm still your Alpha, Kieran said, and there was warning in his tone, and that my personal life is not subject to council approval. It is when it affects the entire pack. Franklin's composure cracked. You're asking us to risk everything we've built, everything we've protected, for a human who might not even survive the mating bond. Do you know what happened to the last human who tried to complete a wolf bond? She died screaming as her body tried to change and failed. Is that what you want for her? Eleanor felt ice slide down her spine. What is he talking about? Kieran's hand found hers, squeezing gently. It's rare, but sometimes human mates have difficulty with the bonding process. Their bodies can't always handle the influx of supernatural energy. You mean it could kill me? No. His voice was fierce. Because I won't complete the bond unless I'm certain you can survive it. I would never put you at risk like that. But you're already bonded to her in your mind, the elderly woman said gently. We can all see it. Alpha. The way you look at her. The way your wolf responds to her presence. You've already claimed her in your heart, even if you haven't marked her physically. What I feel is my own concern, Kieran replied. It's all our concern when it makes you vulnerable, Franklin countered. A human mate makes you weak. A target. Every enemy we have will see her as a way to get to you. Is that really what you want? To put her in constant danger because you can't control your wolf's instincts? Franklin. Kieran's voice dropped to a growl that raised the hair on Eleanor's arms. You're very close to crossing a line. Then let me cross it completely. Franklin stood tall, meeting Kieran's eyes in a challenge. I formally request that you send the human away. For her safety and ours. If you cannot do that, then I question whether you're fit to continue as Alpha. The silence that followed was absolute. Eleanor understood enough about wolf politics to know what Franklin had just done. He'd challenged Kieran's authority in front of the entire council, forced him to choose between his position and his mate. Are you challenging me for Alpha? Kieran asked softly. But there was nothing soft about the power radiating from him. Franklin held his gaze for a long moment, then looked away. No, Alpha. I'm not. But I'm asking you to think about what you're doing. To remember what happened to your father. I remember. Kieran's voice was rough with old pain. I remember every day. But I also remember that he chose love, and I've never once heard him regret that choice. Even at the end. He turned to address the full council. I understand your concerns. I understand your fears. But Eleanor is my mate, and I will not send her away. Not now. Not ever. If that's unacceptable to you, then challenge me properly, and we'll settle it the old way. Otherwise, this discussion is over. No one moved. No one dared challenge an Alpha as powerful as Kieran. Finally, the elderly woman spoke. The council acknowledges your decision, Alpha. But we request one concession. Let us test the girl's blood. Not to judge her worth, but to determine if the mating bond is even possible. If she has no supernatural heritage at all, the bonding could kill her. Surely you'd want to know that before attempting it. Kieran looked at Eleanor, a question in his eyes. The choice, he was saying, was hers. Eleanor thought about everything she'd learned in the past day, about mates and bonds and a man who'd watched over her all night because his wolf recognized her as his. A man who was risking his entire position to protect her. Okay, she said quietly. Test me. But I'm agreeing to this because I want to, not because anyone's forcing me. Understood? Daisy stood, producing a small knife from somewhere in her robes. This will only hurt for a moment. May I? Eleanor held out her hand, trying not to flinch as Daisy made a small cut across her palm. Blood welled up, bright red against her skin. Daisy caught several drops in a small vial, then pressed a cloth to Eleanor's hand to stop the bleeding. I'll need an hour to perform the ritual, Daisy said. The council will reconvene then to hear the results. As the wolves began to file out, Franklin stopped beside Eleanor. Up close, she could see the concern beneath his hostility. I don't hate you, girl, he said quietly. But I love my Alpha, and I've seen what human mates do to wolves. I'm trying to save him from the same fate that destroyed his father. I hope you can understand that. I understand, Eleanor replied. But you're wrong about one thing. I'm not trying to destroy anything. I'm trying to survive. There's a difference. After Franklin left, only Kieran, Simon, and Eleanor remained in the chamber. That went better than expected, Simon said dryly. Only because no one was stupid enough to actually challenge me. Kieran pulled Eleanor close, and she let herself lean into his warmth. Are you all right? I just found out that trying to be with you might literally kill me. So no, I'm not exactly all right. But she didn't pull away. Couldn't make herself pull away when his arms felt like the safest place in the world. Why didn't you tell me the bond could be dangerous? Because I wasn't going to complete it until I was certain you'd survive. And because I didn't want to scare you more than you already were. He pressed his forehead to hers. I meant what I said in there. I won't risk your life, Eleanor. Not for anything. What if the test shows I'm completely human? What if there's no supernatural blood at all? Then we figure something else out. There are rituals, old magic that can strengthen a human's body to handle the bond. It would take time and preparation, but it's possible. His voice dropped lower. Or we don't complete the bond at all. We can be together without the mystical connection. It would be harder, my wolf would never stop pushing for it, but I'd rather have you alive and unmated than lose you trying to force something your body can't handle. Eleanor pulled back to look at him. You'd really do that? Give up the mate bond to keep me safe? Without hesitation. The certainty in his eyes stole her breath. You're more important than any bond. You're more important than anything. Simon cleared his throat awkwardly. I'm going to check on Daisy's progress. You two should probably wait in Kieran's office. The council members will be gossiping, and I'd rather they not have more fuel for their rumors. After Simon left, Kieran led Eleanor through corridors she hadn't explored yet, to a room dominated by a massive desk and walls lined with books and maps. It looked like a place where serious decisions were made, where the weight of leadership was carried. So this is where you rule from, Eleanor said, running her fingers along the desk's polished surface. This is where I handle the boring parts of being alpha. Paperwork, territorial disputes, resource allocation. He moved to a window overlooking the forest. The important parts happen out there. Running with the pack, protecting our territory, making sure everyone is safe and provided for. It sounds exhausting. It is. But it's also all I've ever known. I was born to be alpha, trained for it from childhood. After my father left, I had to grow up fast. He was quiet for a moment. I never resented him for choosing his mate. I resented the pack for making him choose. Eleanor joined him at the window. Franklin said your father died protecting his mate. From hunters. Humans who'd learned what he was and decided to make a name for themselves by killing a werewolf. Kieran's jaw tightened. They shot him with silver bullets while he was in human form. He had just enough time to make sure my mother got away safely before he died. I'm so sorry. My mother survived another 5 years after that, long enough to make sure I was settled as alpha. Then she just gave up. Stopped eating, stopped sleeping, stopped wanting to live. The mate bond works differently for humans, but the grief is just as real. He turned to face her fully. That's why the council is terrified, Eleanor. They don't want to watch me die protecting you, or watch you waste away from grief when I inevitably outlive you. It's not cruelty motivating them. It's fear of history repeating itself, but you're still choosing me anyway. Yes. Why? You barely know me. How can you be sure I'm worth all this trouble? Kieran reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and cupped her face in his hands. Because when I look at you, I see my future. I see joy and laughter, and the possibility of being something more than just an alpha going through the motions. You make me want to live, Eleanor. Not just survive, but actually live, and I haven't felt that way in 73 years. Eleanor's breath caught. She knew she should be cautious, should protect her heart after everything Derek had done to it. But Kieran wasn't Derek. She'd known that from the first moment, even if she'd been too afraid to admit it. I'm scared, she whispered. I know. Not of you. Of this. Of feeling too much too fast. Of trusting someone and having it blow up in my face again. That's fair. His thumbs brushed gently across her cheekbones. I'm scared too. Terrified, actually. But I'm also certain that you're worth being scared for. Before Eleanor could respond, a knock sounded at the door. Simon entered without waiting for permission, his expression grave. Daisy has the results, he said. The council is reconvening now. Chapter 5, Blood Revelation. The walk back to the council chamber felt longer this time. Eleanor's palm still stung from where Daisy had cut it. A constant reminder of what they were about to discover. Would she have supernatural blood? Or was she completely, ordinarily human, making any bond with Kieran potentially fatal? The council members had reassembled, but the atmosphere was different now. Less hostile, more anxious. Even Franklin looked concerned rather than combative as they entered. Daisy stood in the center of the chamber, the vial of Eleanor's blood on a small table beside her. Around it, She'd drawn symbols in what looked like salt, and candles burned at each cardinal point. The setup looked ancient, ritualistic, and vaguely ominous. "Alpha," Daisy said formally. "Miss Garza, the blood ritual is complete." "And?" Kieran's voice was steady, but Eleanor felt the tension radiating from him. Daisy picked up the vial carefully. Inside, Eleanor's blood had separated into distinct layers, normal red blood at the bottom, but above it, a shimmer of something else. Something that caught the candlelight and reflected it in colors that shouldn't exist. "She has supernatural heritage," Daisy announced. "Dormant, but definitely present. The bloodline is old, at least 5 or 6 generations back, and it's Wolf." The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. Eleanor felt Kieran's hand tighten around hers. "Impossible," Franklin said, standing. "If she had wolf blood, we would have scented it. Not if it's been dormant for generations," Daisy explained. "Sometimes the wolf sleeps so deeply it's almost completely human. The magic is there, buried in the DNA, but unexpressed. It would take something significant to awaken it. Like a mate bond," the elderly woman said thoughtfully. "That would explain why the forest let her through. It recognized its own, even if she didn't." Eleanor's mind was reeling. "Are you saying I'm part werewolf?" "Your great-great-great-grandmother was likely a wolf who mated with a human," Daisy said. "Each generation after that was more human than wolf, until the supernatural traits became so recessive they might as well not exist. But the blood remembers. Miss Garza. And with the right catalyst, those dormant genes could express themselves." "What kind of catalyst?" Eleanor asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. "Completing a mate bond with a powerful alpha." Daisy looked at Kieran. "Your wolf recognized hers, even in its sleeping state. That's why the pull is so strong. You're not just mates, you're genetically compatible in a way that almost never happens with human pairings." Franklin sat down heavily. "This changes everything." "It changes nothing," Kieran said firmly. "Eleanor's heritage doesn't make her any more or less worthy of protection. It simply means the bond won't kill her." "It means more than that," the elderly woman said. "If her wolf is awakened through the mate bond, she could potentially become a full pack member, not just an alpha's mate, but a wolf in her own right. That's not been done in centuries, but the old stories speak of it." "Stories," Franklin scoffed. "We're making decisions based on folklore now?" "The stories exist for a reason," Daisy countered. "And the blood doesn't lie. She has the potential, alpha. The question is whether you want to unlock it." Eleanor pulled her hand from Kieran's, needing space to think. "Wait, everyone slow down. You're talking about changing me? Turning me into a werewolf?" "Not turning," Daisy corrected gently. "Awakening what already exists inside you. It's different. Turning a human requires a bite, and the transformation is violent, often fatal. But awakening dormant wolf blood through a mate bond is natural. The magic that's already there just needs permission to express itself. And if I don't want that, if I want to stay human?" The chamber fell silent. Eleanor saw surprise on many faces, apparently. Refusing to become a werewolf wasn't something they'd considered. "Then you stay human," Kieran said quietly. "The bond can still be completed without awakening your wolf. It would be harder, take longer. But it's possible. You don't have to become something you're not, Eleanor. But if she stays human, she'll always be vulnerable," Simon pointed out. "She'll age while you don't. She'll be weaker, slower, unable to defend herself against supernatural threats. Is that really what's best for her?" "What's best for me," Eleanor said sharply, "is letting me make my own decisions about my own body. I've spent the last 2 years having someone else control every aspect of my life. I'm not doing that again. Even if the intentions are good." She saw respect flicker across several council members' faces. "You're right," Kieran said. "I'm sorry. No one should pressure you into anything." Eleanor took a deep breath, trying to organize her chaotic thoughts. "I need to understand what I'm choosing between. If I complete the mate bond but don't awaken the wolf, what happens?" "You'd be connected to Kieran emotionally and physically," Daisy explained. "You'd feel his emotions, sense when he's in danger, be able to communicate mentally over short distances. Your lifespan would extend maybe a century or two instead of a normal human lifetime. But you'd remain physically human, fragile compared to wolves. And if I awaken the wolf? You'd gain all of that plus the ability to shift into wolf form. Enhanced strength, speed, healing. You'd age much more slowly, potentially living as long as Kieran does. You'd truly be Pack, not just an alpha's mate. Daisy paused. But the awakening process is intense, painful. It would take days, possibly weeks, and there's always a small risk of complications. Define complications. The wolf might not wake completely. You could end up stuck between forms, not quite human, not quite wolf. It's rare, but it has happened. Daisy's expression was sympathetic. I won't lie to you, Miss Garza. There are risks either way. But at least now you have options. Eleanor walked to the edge of the chamber, away from the council's scrutiny. She felt Kieran watching her but appreciated that he didn't follow, didn't try to influence her decision. Part werewolf. She had wolf blood running through her veins and never knew it. It explained some things. Actually, the way she'd always felt slightly other, like she didn't quite fit in human society. The vivid dreams she'd had of running on 4 legs. The strange pull she'd always felt toward wild places. But knowing she had dormant wolf genes was different from choosing to awaken them. That was permanent, irreversible. It would change everything about who she was. Then again, everything had already changed. She couldn't go back to her old life even if she wanted to. Derek would find her eventually if she returned to the human world. And more than that, she didn't want to go back. Didn't want to return to being small and afraid and alone. Here, she'd found something. Not just Kieran, though the pull toward him was undeniable, but the possibility of being strong, of being protected, of belonging to something bigger than herself. Can I ask a question? Eleanor said, turning back to the council. Of course, the elderly woman replied. If I choose to awaken the wolf, if I become Pack, would I be accepted? Or would there always be whispers about the human who had to be changed? Would I always be an outsider? It was Franklin who answered. Surprisingly, if you earn your place through the proper trials, you'd be Pack. Fully. The old laws are clear. Any wolf who proves themselves is accepted, regardless of how they came to be wolf. It's not about where you start, but who you become. What trials? Tests of strength, courage, and loyalty, Simon explained. They vary depending on the individual, but generally include a hunt, a challenge fight, and a demonstration of Pack dedication. They're not easy, but they're fair. And if I fail? Then you remain unmated until you can pass them, Kieran said. But Eleanor, you don't have to do any of this. We can find another way. I want to. Eleanor interrupted. The certainty surprised her. But once the words were out, she knew they were true. I want to awaken the wolf. I want to become Pack. Not because of the mate bond or because anyone's pressuring me, but because I'm tired of being weak. I'm tired of running and hiding and being afraid. If I have the potential to be stronger, I want it. She met Kieran's eyes across the chamber. But I want to do it right. The trials, the proper way. I don't want anyone saying I only earned my place because I'm the alpha's mate. Pride blazed in Kieran's expression. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything. The elderly woman smiled. Spoken like a true wolf. I approve of this one, Alpha. She has spirit. Then it's settled, Kieran said, addressing the full council. Eleanor will undergo the awakening ritual once she's properly prepared. After she's proven herself through the trials, the mate bond will be completed. Does anyone object? Silence. Even Franklin looked grudgingly approving. No objections, the elderly woman said. Then this council recognizes Eleanor Garza as a potential Pack member, pending successful completion of the trials. May the moon guide her path. May the moon guide her path, the council echoed. As the meeting dissolved, Eleanor felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She'd made her choice. Now she just had to live with the consequences. Kieran reached her side immediately. You didn't have to do that. The trials can be brutal, Eleanor. I would have found another way. I know. But this is my choice, and I'm making it. She squeezed his hand. Besides, how hard can it be? Simon, who joined them, actually laughed. Famous last words. The last wolf who went through the trials ended up with 2 broken ribs and a concussion. Very encouraging, thank you, Eleanor said dryly. When does she start? Kieran asked. Traditionally, there's a week of preparation, Daisy said, approaching with several other council members. Physical training, mental conditioning, learning pack laws and customs. Then the awakening ritual, which takes 3 days if all goes well. After recovery, the trials themselves. So we're looking at 2 weeks minimum, Simon calculated. 3, if the awakening is complicated. I can handle it, Eleanor said with more confidence than she felt. I know you can, Kieran said softly. But you won't do it alone. I'll be with you every step of the way. Actually, Alpha, Daisy interjected apologetically. Tradition dictates that candidates go through preparation without interference from the Alpha. It's meant to prove they can stand on their own merit. Kieran's expression darkened. Eleanor is under my protection. And she'll remain protected, Daisy assured him. But she needs to train with the pack, not be sheltered by their Alpha. It's the only way the trials will mean anything. Eleanor saw the conflict on Kieran's face, his wolf warring with his rational mind. She touched his arm gently. She's right. If I'm going to do this, I need to do it properly. That means you can't hover over me the entire time. I don't hover, Kieran protested. Simon snorted. You absolutely hover. 1 week, Kieran said, directing this at Daisy. She gets 1 week of preparation before the awakening. I want her in peak condition before we attempt anything that painful. 2 weeks would be better. 1 week, or we find another way entirely. There was no negotiation in Kieran's tone. Daisy sighed. 1 week. But she trains hard. No special treatment. I wouldn't want special treatment, Eleanor said. When do we start? Tomorrow at dawn, a new voice said. Eleanor turned to see a woman she hadn't met yet stepping forward. She was built like a fighter, all lean muscle and sharp edges, with short-cropped hair and eyes that assessed Eleanor like a predator sizing up prey. I'm Luisa Gonzalez. I'll be your primary trainer. Nice to meet you, Eleanor said, extending her hand. Luisa looked at it for a moment before shaking firmly. We'll see if you still think so after day 1. I don't go easy on trainees, and I'm not impressed by potential mates or dormant bloodlines. You want to be pack? You earn it like everyone else. That's all I'm asking for. Good. Luisa's smile was sharp. Dawn means dawn, not dawnish. If you're late, we start with a 10-mile run as punishment. Wear comfortable clothes you don't mind destroying. Questions. Eleanor had about 1,000 questions, but she suspected none of them would be answered until training actually started. No questions. Then I'll see you tomorrow. Don't eat breakfast, you'll just throw it up anyway. With that encouraging statement, Luisa walked away. She seems pleasant, Eleanor said weakly. Luisa is one of our best warriors, Simon explained. If anyone can prepare you for the trials in a week, it's her. She's just intense. That's one word for it, Kieran muttered. He turned to Eleanor, pulling her slightly away from the others. Are you absolutely certain about this? Once the awakening begins, there's no stopping it. You'll be committed. I'm certain. Eleanor rose on her toes and kissed his cheek, feeling bold. Thank you for letting me choose. Always, Kieran said roughly. You'll always have choice with me. I promise you that. As they left the council chamber together, Eleanor felt the weight of eyes following them. The pack was watching, judging, waiting to see if the human woman could become one of them. She'd gone from nobody to the center of pack politics in less than 48 hours. It should have terrified her. Instead, she felt alive in a way she hadn't in years. I should let you rest, Kieran said when they reached her room. You'll need your strength for tomorrow. But he didn't let go of her hand, and Eleanor didn't pull away. Stay, she said impulsively. Just for a little while. I don't want to be alone right now. Something vulnerable flickered across his face. I'd like that. They ended up sitting by the fireplace, Kieran in one of the large chairs and Eleanor curled up on the floor with her back against his legs. It felt natural, comfortable in a way that defied the short time they'd known each other. "Tell me about the pack," Eleanor said. "Not the politics or the laws, the actual people. Who are they?" Kieran was quiet for a moment, then began speaking softly, his fingers absently playing with strands of her hair. "Simon you've met. He's been my beta since I took over as alpha. More brother than friend at this point. Stacy is young, only turned 20 last year, but she has a gift for making people feel welcome. Franklin is complicated. He's been advisor to 3 generations of alphas, and he genuinely believes he's protecting the pack. He's not wrong as often as I'd like him to be. And Louisa turned 25 years ago after her human life fell apart. She was attacked by a rogue wolf and left for dead. I found her, offered her the bite, and she's been pack ever since. She's fierce, loyal, and she doesn't trust easily. But once you earn her respect, she'll have your back forever. I'm starting to understand why she doesn't like me. I represent everything that went wrong in her human life: vulnerability, weakness." "She doesn't dislike you," Kieran corrected gently. "She's testing you. Everyone will be testing you for the next week. It's not personal. It's pack survival. They need to know you're strong enough to stand with us. And if I'm not, then we figure something else out." "But Eleanor?" His hand cupped her chin, tilting her face up to look at him. "I've seen you survive abuse, escape danger, walk into a council chamber full of predators, and demand to be judged on your own merit. You're already stronger than you know." Eleanor felt tears prick her eyes. "I don't feel strong. Most of the time, I just feel scared and out of my depth." "That's courage. Being scared and doing it anyway." He wiped away a tear that had escaped with his thumb. "Get some rest. Tomorrow starts your new life." After he left, Eleanor lay in bed staring at the ceiling, her mind too active for sleep. Everything was moving so fast. 3 days ago, she'd been running for her life from Derek. Now she was preparing to become a werewolf and join a pack of supernatural beings who would judge whether she was worthy. It was insane. All of it was completely insane. But as she finally drifted toward sleep, Eleanor realized she wouldn't change any of it. For the first time in longer than she could remember, she had hope, had purpose, had something worth fighting for. Tomorrow, she'd start proving herself. Tomorrow, everything changed. Chapter 6, Trial by Fire. Dawn came far too early. Eleanor woke to someone pounding on her door with enough force to rattle the hinges. She stumbled out of bed, disoriented and still half asleep, to find Louisa standing in the hallway with her arms crossed and an expression that promised pain. "You're lucky you're already awake," Louisa said. "I was prepared to drag you out of bed by your ankles. You've got 5 minutes to change and meet me outside. Don't bother with coffee, you won't keep it down." Before Eleanor could respond, Louisa was gone, her footsteps echoing down the corridor. Eleanor changed quickly into the workout clothes Stacy had provided, fitted leggings and a tank top that would allow full range of movement. She braided her hair back tightly and splashed cold water on her face to wake herself up properly. Her reflection in the mirror looked determined, which was good, because the rest of her felt like she'd made a terrible mistake. Outside, the pre-dawn air was cool and misty. Louisa waited in the clearing behind the house, and she wasn't alone. A dozen other wolves stood with her, all wearing similar workout gear, and watching Eleanor with expressions ranging from curiosity to skepticism. "Everyone, this is Eleanor," Louisa announced. "She'll be training with us this week in preparation for the awakening and trials. I expect you all to push her hard, but fair. Questions?" A young man raised his hand, one of the wolves Eleanor had seen briefly at the council meeting. "Is it true she's the alpha's mate?" "That's irrelevant to training," Louisa said flatly. "Here, she's just another candidate who needs to prove herself. Her relationship with Kieran doesn't earn her any special privileges or protections." "Understood?" Murmurs of agreement rippled through the group. "Good. Eleanor, these are your training partners for the week. We start every morning at dawn with a 10-mile run through the territory. You'll keep up or you'll be left behind. After the run, combat training, then pack dynamics and law study. Afternoons are endurance and strength training. Evenings are meditation and mental conditioning." Louisa's smile was sharp, Any questions? Eleanor's legs already ached just hearing the schedule. No questions. Then let's move. Stay with the pack. And try not to die. The run was brutal. Eleanor had considered herself reasonably fit before she jogged occasionally, did yoga when she remembered. But trying to keep pace with werewolves who could run for hours without breaking a sweat was humbling in the extreme. Within the first mile, she was gasping for breath. By mile 3, her legs were screaming. At mile 5, she genuinely considered just lying down in the forest and accepting defeat. But every time she faltered, one of the other wolves would fall back to pace her. Encouraging words, occasional tips on breathing or stride length, they weren't being kind. Exactly more like they were protecting an investment. But it helped. "You're doing better than expected," a woman said, running easily beside Eleanor. She had warm brown skin and kind eyes, despite the intensity of the workout. "I'm Clarissa Patel, by the way. Most people call me Clara." "Eleanor," she gasped. "Though you probably knew that. We all knew that." Clara smiled. "The whole pack's been talking about you since Kieran brought you in. You're either very brave or very stupid to agree to this. Can I be both?" Clara laughed. "Probably. That's usually how the best warriors start out, too brave and too stupid to know when to quit." By the time they completed the 10 miles, Eleanor's entire body was one massive cramp. She collapsed onto the grass, unable to move, while the other wolves barely looked winded. Louisa crouched beside her. "Not bad for a human. You didn't quit, which is more than some wolves manage on their first run. Take 5 minutes to catch your breath, then we're moving to combat training." "5 minutes?" Eleanor wheezed. "I need 5 hours. You need to learn that your body can do more than you think it can. Get up." Combat training was somehow worse than the run. Louisa paired Eleanor with Clara, who apologized in advance before systematically demonstrating how many ways Eleanor didn't know how to defend herself. Within minutes, Eleanor was on her back for the 3rd time, staring up at the sky and wondering if she'd made a catastrophic mistake. "Your stance is all wrong," Louisa called out. "You're standing like a human trying to box. You need to think like a wolf. Low center of gravity. Ready to move in any direction." Again. Eleanor got up. Got knocked down. Got up again. This pattern continued for what felt like hours. Her body accumulated bruises on top of bruises. She learned the hard way that werewolves didn't believe in going easy on trainees. Every takedown hurt. Every failure was pointed out and corrected. But slowly, so slowly, she almost didn't notice she started to improve, started to anticipate Clara's moves, started to last a few seconds longer before being pinned. "Better," Louisa finally said as Eleanor managed to dodge a sweep and counter with an admittedly clumsy strike. "You're learning. Slowly. But you're learning." The morning session ended with Eleanor face down in the grass, every muscle trembling with exhaustion. She heard footsteps approach and looked up to see Kieran standing over her, concern written across his features. "Should I be worried that you look half dead?" he asked, but his tone was gentle. "Only half?" Eleanor tried to laugh, but it came out as more of a groan. "I was aiming for 3/4 dead." He knelt beside her, and she saw his jaw tighten as he took in her various bruises and scrapes. "Louisa is pushing too hard. You need more time to adjust." "No," Eleanor interrupted, pushing herself up to sitting despite her body's protests. "Don't interfere. I asked for this. I need to do it on my own. You don't need to prove anything to me. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for me." She met his eyes, needing him to understand. "For the first time in my life, I'm choosing to be strong instead of accepting being weak. Please don't take that away from me." Kieran studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "All right, but I'm allowed to worry." "You're allowed to worry," Eleanor agreed. "Just do it from a distance so Louisa doesn't yell at me for getting special treatment." He smiled at that, then leaned in and pressed a soft kiss to her temple. The gesture was so gentle, so at odds with the brutal morning she'd endured, that Eleanor felt tears prick her eyes. "I'm proud of you," Kieran said quietly. "More than you know." After he left, Clara appeared with a water bottle and a knowing look. He's got it bad. Is it that obvious? To everyone except maybe you two. Clara helped Eleanor to her feet. Come on. Afternoon session starts in an hour, and you need food before we do endurance training. The dining hall was filled with pack members eating lunch. Eleanor felt their eyes follow her as she entered, felt the weight of their judgment and curiosity. But she kept her head high and followed Clara to get food. How's training going? Stacy appeared at Eleanor's elbow, her usual bright smile in place. Louisa hasn't killed you yet, so that's a good sign. The day's not over, Eleanor said dryly. Ask me again tonight and we'll see if I survived. That's the spirit. Stacy loaded her plate with an impressive amount of food. Fair warning, endurance training is worse than the morning run. But the good news is, after today your body will hurt so much that everything else will feel easy by comparison. That's the good news? Relatively speaking, endurance training turned out to be an understatement. Louisa had them doing exercises Eleanor had never heard of, most of which seemed designed to make every muscle group scream simultaneously. Burpees, bear crawls, rope climbing, tire flipping, the list went on and on. Wolves need to be able to fight for hours if necessary, Louisa explained as Eleanor struggled through her 50th push-up. Your human body will give out long before your wolf does once you're awakened. But we can train your stamina now so the transition is easier. How long does the awakening take? Eleanor gasped. 3 days. Usually. First day, the dormant genes start activating. That's mostly fever and pain as your body begins to change on a cellular level. Second day, the wolf starts to emerge. That's when the real agony begins, as your bone structure begins to remember what it should be. Third day, if all goes well, you complete your first shift. Louisa's expression was serious. I won't lie to you, Eleanor. It's going to be the worst pain you've ever experienced. Worse than any injury, any illness. Some candidates pass out from the intensity, but I'll survive it? With your bloodline? Almost certainly. The risk is that your wolf doesn't fully wake, or that it wakes but you can't control it. That's why we're doing the mental conditioning in the evenings. You need to be able to keep your mind intact when your body is screaming. Eleanor absorbed that information and kept moving. What else could she do? She'd committed to this path. There was no backing out now. The afternoon session finally ended as the sun began to set. Eleanor could barely walk by the time Louisa dismissed them, her legs shaking with every step. Clara and Stacy had to practically carry her back to the house. Mental conditioning in an hour, Louisa called after them. Don't be late. I hate her, Eleanor mumbled. Everyone hates her by day 1, Clara said cheerfully. By day 3, you'll respect her. By the end of the week, you'll be grateful for her. I seriously doubt that. Mental conditioning, it turned out, was led by Daisy in a quiet room filled with cushions and soft lighting. Eleanor and the other trainees sat in a circle, while Daisy explained the basics of maintaining human consciousness when the wolf instincts took over. Your wolf is part of you, but it's also its own entity, Daisy said. It has its own desires, its own priorities. After awakening, the first few days will be a constant battle for dominance. Your wolf will want to run, to hunt, to establish its place in the pack hierarchy. Your human mind needs to remain in control. How? Eleanor asked. Practice. Meditation. Learning to find the quiet center of yourself that remains constant, regardless of what form you take. Daisy guided them through breathing exercises, visualization techniques, ways to ground themselves when instinct threatened to overwhelm reason. It was the first time all day Eleanor's body wasn't actively being tortured, and she found herself relaxing despite her exhaustion. The meditation helped, made her feel more centered, more prepared for what was coming. By the time the session ended, it was fully dark outside. Eleanor dragged herself back to her room, took a scalding hot shower to ease her aching muscles, and collapsed into bed. She'd survived day 1, 6 more days to go. The week passed in a blur of pain and exhaustion. Each day followed the same brutal pattern: dawn run, combat training, endurance work, mental conditioning. Eleanor's body adapted slowly, building muscle and stamina she'd never had before. The bruises stopped being quite so dramatic. The runs got marginally easier. By day 3, She managed to last 30 seconds in a sparring match with Clara before being taken down. By day 5, she made it a full minute. Small victories, but victories nonetheless. The pack's attitude toward her shifted too. The skepticism remained, but it was tempered by grudging respect. She was trying, she wasn't giving up. That counted for something in their eyes. Kieran kept his distance during training hours, but Eleanor saw him watching from various windows, felt his presence even when he wasn't visible. It should have made her self-conscious, but instead it made her feel safe, protected, like she had someone in her corner even when she was fighting her own battles. On the evening of the 6th day, after the worst training session yet, Eleanor found Simon waiting outside the meditation room. "The Alpha wants to see you," he said. "If you're not too tired." Eleanor was exhausted beyond measure, but she nodded. "Where is he?" "His private study. I'll show you." Simon led her through parts of the house she hadn't explored yet, up a narrow staircase to what appeared to be Kieran's personal quarters. The study was smaller than his official office, more intimate. Bookshelves lined the walls, and a fire crackled in the fireplace. Kieran stood at the window, but turned when she entered. "Eleanor, thank you for coming." Simon made it sound important. "It is. Or at least, I hope it is." He gestured to a comfortable chair near the fire. "Sit, please. You look ready to collapse." "I feel ready to collapse." But Eleanor sat gratefully, the warmth of the fire soothing her aching muscles. "What did you want to talk about?" Kieran sat across from her, and she noticed he looked uncertain, an expression she'd never seen on him before. "Tomorrow is your last day of preparation. The day after, we begin the awakening ritual. Once that starts, there's no stopping it. So I need to ask you one more time, while you still have the chance to back out, are you absolutely certain this is what you want?" Eleanor had expected this conversation, had been preparing for it all week. "I'm certain. Even knowing how much it will hurt, even knowing you could get stuck between forms, or that your wolf might be too strong to control, even knowing all of that." She leaned forward, needing him to understand. "Kieran, for the past 2 years I've been trapped, controlled, made to feel small and powerless. This week has been the hardest thing I've ever done, but it's also been the first time I've felt strong, capable, like I'm becoming who I'm supposed to be. You don't need to change for me to see your strength." "I know, but I need to change for me to feel it." Eleanor reached across the space between them, taking his hand. "I want this. Not because of the mate bond, or because it will make pack politics easier. I want it because I'm tired of being afraid, tired of being vulnerable. I want to be able to protect myself, to stand on my own." Kieran's fingers tightened around hers. "Then tomorrow night, we begin. But Eleanor, I need you to understand, once your pack, once your wolf awakens, everything changes. The bond between us will be stronger. Your instincts will be different. You'll feel things you've never felt before." "Like what?" "Territorial urges, protective instincts, the need to establish your place in the hierarchy." He paused. "And the mate bond will intensify. Right now, you feel drawn to me. After awakening, that draw will become almost overwhelming. Your wolf will recognize mine and demand completion of the bond. You'll need to be strong enough to resist that pull until after you've completed the trials." "Why?" "If we're mates, why wait?" "Because the trials need to prove you can function independently of me. If we complete the bond first, we'll be too connected for the pack to see where I end and you begin. They need to know you're strong on your own merit, not just because you're tied to their alpha." Eleanor understood the logic, even if her heart rebelled against it. "So no bond until after I pass the trials." "Exactly. Which means several weeks of fighting instincts that will be screaming at us to claim each other. It won't be easy." "Nothing about this has been easy," Eleanor pointed out. "What's a few more weeks of torture?" Kieran smiled, but it was tinged with something that looked like longing. "You continue to surprise me. Most candidates would be terrified at this point. You just keep pushing forward. I learned a long time ago that standing still is the same as giving up. I'd rather die trying than live as a coward." "You're not a coward. You never have been." He stood, pulling her to her feet. Get some rest. Tomorrow's training will be light. We need you in good condition for the ritual. The day after tomorrow, everything changes." Eleanor nodded, but didn't immediately leave. Instead, she rose on her toes and kissed him properly this time, not just a peck on the cheek. Kieran made a sound low in his throat and pulled her closer, one hand tangling in her hair. The kiss deepened, becoming something desperate and claiming. Eleanor felt heat pool in her stomach, felt every nerve ending light up with awareness. This was what the mate bond would feel like multiplied: this connection, this certainty, this overwhelming sense of rightness. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, Kieran rested his forehead against hers. "You're going to be the death of me. At least you'll die happy," he laughed, the sound rough and genuine. "Get out of here before I forget all my good intentions and mark you right now." Eleanor left with her heart racing and her body humming with unfulfilled desire. Tomorrow was her last day of preparation. The day after, she'd either become a wolf or die trying. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, Eleanor felt ready for whatever came next. Chapter 7. Between Two Worlds. The ritual chamber was deep beneath the main house, carved from living stone that pulsed with ancient magic. Eleanor descended the narrow staircase with Kieran at her side, each step taking her further from her human life and closer to something she couldn't quite imagine. "Are you ready?" Kieran asked for the dozenth time that morning. "As ready as I'll ever be." Eleanor's voice was steadier than she felt. "What happens once we start? Daisy will perform the ritual to activate your dormant genes. I'll anchor you with my presence. My alpha energy will help guide your wolf to the surface. The rest is up to your body and your will." He stopped at the bottom of the stairs, turning to face her fully. "It's going to hurt, Eleanor, more than anything you've experienced. And there's nothing I can do to stop it or make it easier. I'll be there, but I'll be helpless to help you. That's going to drive my wolf insane. Then your wolf will just have to deal with it." Eleanor tried to smile, but it came out shaky. "I can do this. I know you can." The chamber itself was circular, with symbols carved into the floor in patterns that seemed to shift in the flickering candlelight. Daisy was already there, preparing various herbs and oils on a small altar. Clara and Louisa stood near the wall's witnesses, Eleanor realized, to ensure the ritual was performed properly. "Eleanor," Daisy greeted her warmly. "How are you feeling?" "Terrified, determined, both at once." "That's the correct response." Daisy gestured to a pallet in the center of the circle. "Lie down. The ritual itself only takes a few minutes, but once your wolf begins to wake, you'll be here for 3 days minimum. We'll keep you as comfortable as possible." Eleanor lay down on the surprisingly soft pallet. The stone beneath was warm, heated by some magic she didn't understand. Kieran knelt beside her, taking her hand. "I'll be right here," he promised. "Every moment. You won't be alone." Daisy began to chant in a language Eleanor didn't recognize, something old and powerful that made the air itself vibrate. She anointed Eleanor's forehead with oil that smelled of pine and earth and wild things, drew symbols on her arms and chest that glowed faintly in the dim light. The magic built slowly, a pressure in the air that made Eleanor's ears pop. She felt it sink into her skin, seeking something buried deep in her DNA, searching for the wolf that had been sleeping for generations. "This is the moment," Daisy said, switching back to English. "Once I speak the final words, there's no stopping the process. Eleanor, do you consent to this awakening, to accepting the wolf that lives within you and all the responsibilities that come with it?" "I consent," Eleanor said clearly. "Kieran, as Alpha, do you accept responsibility for guiding this awakening and welcoming the new wolf into your pack?" "I accept," Kieran said, his grip on Eleanor's hand tightening. Daisy spoke 3 words in that ancient language, 3 words that resonated with power older than civilization. The magic crashed over Eleanor like a wave, and suddenly her entire body was on fire. She screamed. It felt like every cell in her body was being torn apart and rebuilt. Her blood boiled in her veins. Her bones ached with a pressure that threatened to shatter them from the inside out. The dormant wolf genes were activating, rewriting her DNA, and her human body was fighting the transformation with everything it had. "I've got you." Kieran's voice broke through the agony. "I'm here. You're not alone." Eleanor couldn't respond. couldn't do anything except endure as her body betrayed her in the worst possible way. She felt Kieran's presence like an anchor, the alpha power radiating from him, giving her something to hold on to when she wanted nothing more than to let go and escape into unconsciousness. But she couldn't pass out. Wouldn't. She'd chosen this. She would see it through. Time lost all meaning. The pain came in waves, sometimes a dull ache that spread through her entire body, sometimes sharp spikes that made her cry out. She was vaguely aware of Kieran murmuring encouragement, of cool cloths on her forehead, of water being pressed to her lips. At some point, hours later, days, the fever broke. Eleanor lay gasping on the pallet, her body drenched in sweat, every muscle trembling. The worst of the pain had passed, but she could feel something moving beneath her skin now, something that wasn't quite human. That's day 1 complete. Daisy's voice came from somewhere above her. The genes are activating. Tomorrow, her body will begin the physical changes needed for shifting. How is she? That was Clara. Stronger than expected. Most candidates pass out multiple times during the first stage. She stayed conscious through all of it. Stubborn, Kieran said, and Eleanor could hear both pride and worry in his tone. She's too stubborn to give up. Eleanor wanted to tell him she could hear them, but her voice wouldn't work. Her body felt like it belonged to someone else, heavy and unresponsive and strange. Sleep claimed her eventually, dragging her down into darkness where dreams of running on 4 legs mixed with memories of her human life, until she couldn't tell which was real and which was fantasy. She woke to worse pain. Day 2 was everything Daisy had warned about and more. Eleanor felt her bones shifting, restructuring themselves into forms that could transform between human and wolf. Her muscles tore and rebuilt themselves stronger. Her senses sharpened until every sound was too loud, every smell too intense, every touch like fire against her skin. And through it all, she felt the wolf. Not conscious yet, but there a presence in the back of her mind that was simultaneously foreign and intimately familiar, like remembering someone she'd known in another life. Talk to her, Daisy instructed Kieran during one of Eleanor's brief moments of lucidity. Let your wolf communicate with hers. It will help guide the awakening. Kieran leaned close, and Eleanor felt his breath against her ear as he began to speak in that ancient language. She didn't understand the words, but her wolf did. Eleanor felt the presence in her mind stir, responding to the alpha's call. Wake up. Kieran's voice echoed in her thoughts, not spoken aloud but transmitted directly through whatever supernatural connection existed between them. Your alpha calls you. Your mate calls you. Wake up and run with us. The wolf stirred more strongly now, pushing toward consciousness. Eleanor felt herself being pulled backward, making room for this new aspect of herself to emerge. It should have been terrifying, losing control of her own mind to something inhuman. Instead, it felt like coming home. That's it, Kieran encouraged. Come to me. Let me show you what you can become. Pain exploded through Eleanor's body as something fundamental shifted. She screamed again, but the sound that came out was somewhere between human and animal, a howl of agony and transformation that echoed through the chamber. She's close, Daisy said urgently. Kieran, you need to shift. Let your wolf show hers the way. Eleanor heard rather than saw Kieran's transformation, the sound of bones cracking and reshaping, the rustle of clothes being discarded. Then a massive black wolf was there, pressing close to her convulsing form. He nudged her with his muzzle, whining softly in a way that conveyed both encouragement and sympathy. The wolf in Eleanor's mind surged forward, drawn to the alpha. Eleanor felt her body begin to change in earnest, felt her spine elongate, her face push forward into a muzzle, her hands and feet reshape into paws. The transformation that should have been impossible, that her human body shouldn't be able to survive, happened with a violence that stole her breath, and then, suddenly, the pain stopped. Eleanor lay panting on the chamber floor, but everything was different. She saw colors she'd never seen before, smelled things so complex and layered she couldn't begin to identify them all, heard heartbeats from 3 rooms away. She tried to stand and discovered she had 4 legs instead of 2. The shock of it nearly overwhelmed her. She was a wolf. Actually a wolf, with fur and paws and a tail. And, breathe. Kieran's voice filled her mind. clearer now than before. "You're all right. This is normal. Just breathe, and let your instincts guide you." Eleanor tried to respond, but what came out was a confused whine. She couldn't figure out how to make her new body work. Everything was wrong: the center of gravity, the way her limbs moved, even the way her head balanced on her neck. Kieran moved closer, pressing against her side to steady her. The contact helped. Eleanor leaned into him, drawing strength from his presence as she tried to make sense of her new form. "Stand," he instructed gently. "One paw at a time. Don't overthink it. Let your wolf show you." Eleanor focused on the presence in her mind, her wolf, who understood instinctively what to do. Slowly, awkwardly, she managed to get her forelegs beneath her and stand. She swayed dangerously, and Kieran moved to brace her again. "Good," he praised. "Now try walking. Just a few steps." It took several attempts and multiple falls before Eleanor managed a shaky walk across the chamber. Everything felt wrong and right simultaneously. Her human mind kept trying to impose two-legged logic on a four-legged body, while her wolf insisted she already knew how to do this. "You're doing beautifully," Kieran said, and Eleanor could hear the pride in his mental voice. "Most new wolves can't even stand for hours after their first shift. You're already walking. Incredible." She heard Daisy say from somewhere that sounded very far away. "Her wolf is strong. Much stronger than I expected from dormant bloodlines." Eleanor tried to turn her head toward the voice and overbalanced, tumbling in an undignified heap. Kieran's laugh echoed in her mind, warm and genuine and utterly delighted. "You'll get the hang of it," he promised. "For now, rest. You need to stabilize in this form before trying to shift back." Eleanor didn't argue. Now that the initial shock was wearing off, exhaustion crashed over her in waves. She'd done it. She'd survived the awakening. Her wolf was awake and present and powerful. She curled up on the pallet, which was much more comfortable now that she had fur, and felt Kieran settle beside her, his larger wolf form wrapping protectively around her smaller one. The gesture should have made her feel trapped. Instead, she felt safe. Safe and home, and exactly where she was supposed to be. Eleanor let her eyes close. And for the first time in 3 days, she slept without pain. Day 3 was about control. Eleanor woke to find herself still in wolf form, pressed against Kieran's side. The chamber was brighter. Now someone had opened shutters she hadn't noticed before, letting in natural light. She could hear birds outside, smell the forest, feel the earth's pulse through the stone beneath her. Everything was so vivid, so immediate. Her human senses seemed muted by comparison, like she'd been living her entire life with cotton in her ears and a film over her eyes. "Ready to try shifting back?" Kieran's voice entered her mind. He'd shifted back to human form while she slept, and sat beside her now wearing fresh clothes someone must have brought. Eleanor tried to respond mentally, but wasn't sure how. Instead, a questioning whine emerged. "Mental communication takes practice," Kieran said aloud, switching to speech. "For now, we'll focus on getting you back to human form. The longer you stay wolf, the harder it will be to remember how to change back." That sounded ominous. Eleanor focused on her body, trying to will it back to human shape. Nothing happened. She tried harder, pushing with her mind, and felt her wolf resist. The wolf didn't want to change back, wanted to stay in this powerful form where everything made sense, where instinct ruled and human complications didn't exist. "You need to convince her," Kieran said, apparently sensing her struggle. "Your wolf is part of you now, but you're still the dominant consciousness. Talk to her. Explain why you need to change." Eleanor turned her attention inward, to the presence that was both her and not her. The wolf was there, strong and wild and wanting nothing more than to run through the forest and establish her place in the pack. "I understand," Eleanor thought at her wolf. "I want that too. But we need to be able to control this, to shift when we choose, not just when instinct demands it. Please, work with me." The wolf considered this, then reluctantly began to retreat. Eleanor felt her body start to shift again, bones and muscles rearranging themselves back into human form. This transformation was less painful than the first, but no less disorienting. She gasped as she found herself suddenly on 2 legs again, naked and shivering on the pallet. Kieran immediately wrapped a blanket around her shoulders, his touch careful and respectful. "Well done. That was an excellent first shift back. How long was I a wolf?" Eleanor's voice came out rough from disuse. "About 12 hours. Most new wolves stay shifted for a full day or more before they can change back." He offered her water, which she drank gratefully. "How do you feel?" "Strange. Like I'm not quite fitting in my own skin anymore." Eleanor looked at her hands, completely human now, but she could still feel the ghost memory of paws. "Is that normal?" "Very normal. It takes time to adjust to having two forms. Eventually, both will feel equally natural." Kieran helped her stand, steadying her when her legs wobbled. "Daisy wants to examine you. Make sure the awakening completed properly. Then you can rest for real." The examination was thorough. Daisy checked Eleanor's eyes, her reflexes. Asked her to shift partially just claws and fangs, to ensure she had control over the transformation. Everything checked out perfectly. "Your wolf is strong," Daisy confirmed. "Stronger than most born wolves. Honestly. I suspect that's because the bloodline concentrated itself over generations instead of diluting. You have centuries of dormant power expressing itself all at once." "Is that good or bad?" Eleanor asked. "Both. Good because you'll be physically powerful and heal quickly. Bad because controlling that power will be more challenging. Your wolf will push for dominance constantly until you establish a firm mental hierarchy." Daisy packed away her supplies. "The trials will help with that. Combat and challenges will teach your wolf to respect your human judgment." "When can I start the trials?" "Not for at least a week. Your body needs time to stabilize, and you need to practice shifting until it's second nature. Luna will continue your training, but with a focus on wolf form combat now." Eleanor nodded, absorbing all of this. A week of recovery and practice, then the trials that would determine if she was truly pack. "Can I go outside?" she asked. "My wolf is restless. She wants to run." Kieran smiled. "I'd be disappointed if she didn't. Come on. I'll show you the territory." They shifted together in the forest clearing behind the house. Eleanor's transformation still clumsy but functional. Kieran's as smooth as breathing. The moment she was on four paws again, Eleanor felt the pull of the wild. Every scent was an invitation. Every sound was a challenge or an opportunity. "Stay close," Kieran instructed. "The territory is large, and there are boundaries you need to learn." But Eleanor was already running. Her wolf had been caged for too long, 3 days of pain and transformation and restraint. Now it demanded freedom. She bolted into the trees, her new body moving with a grace and speed her human form had never possessed. "Eleanor!" Kieran's voice in her mind held both exasperation and amusement. "You need to learn the territory boundaries before you go sprinting off." She probably should have listened. Definitely should have listened. But the joy of running on 4 legs, of feeling powerful and wild and free, overwhelmed any rational thought. Eleanor ran until her lungs burned, until her muscles screamed, until the human part of her mind started to fade beneath the wolf's simple joy. A growl from ahead stopped her dead. Eleanor skidded to a halt to find 3 wolves blocking her path, all larger than her, all radiating aggression. "Intruder," one of them thought at her, the mental voice harsh. "This is pack territory. State your business or face the consequences." Eleanor's wolf responded instinctively, dropping into a submissive crouch. She was new, young. She didn't want to fight these established pack members. But some stubborn human part of her rebelled at the submissive posture. She hadn't survived everything she'd survived just to cower in front of strangers. "I'm pack," Eleanor tried to project, hoping they could understand her. "Alpha Kieran brought me. I'm training for trials." "The human mate," another wolf said, and there was contempt in the thought. "Playing at being wolf. You don't belong here, weak thing." The third wolf lunged without warning. Eleanor barely dodged, her inexperience nearly fatal. She stumbled, recovered, and felt her wolf surge forward with instincts that saved her life. She wasn't a trained fighter yet, but her wolf knew how to survive. Teeth snapped at her flank, claws raked her shoulder. Eleanor yelped in pain and fear, trying to defend herself but hopelessly outmatched. Then, Kieran, was there a massive black blur of fury that hit the attacking wolf with enough force to send it tumbling. His snarl echoed through the forest, and Eleanor felt alpha power crash over the clearing like a physical blow. The three wolves immediately dropped into submission, bellies on the ground, whining apologies. "She is under my protection." Kieran's mental voice was cold enough to freeze blood. "She is my mate and a candidate for pack membership. The next wolf who challenges her without cause will answer to me personally. Am I understood?" "Yes, Alpha," came the chorus of submissive responses. "Leave. Now." The three wolves scrambled away, tails between their legs. Once they were gone, Kieran turned to Eleanor, and she felt the full weight of his anger not at her, exactly, but at the situation. "Let me see your shoulder," he commanded. Eleanor sat, allowing him to examine the claw marks. They weren't deep, but they bled freely and hurt like hell. "They'll heal within a few hours," Kieran said, his mental tone gentler now. "But Eleanor, you can't just run off like that. You don't know the territory, don't know which wolves are friendly and which will see you as an outsider to be driven off." "I'm sorry," Eleanor tried to project. "My wolf just wanted to run. I couldn't control it." "I know. That's why you need to practice control before running wild." He pressed against her uninjured side. "Come on. Let's get those wounds treated and work on teaching you to communicate mentally. You'll need that skill for the trials." As they walked back slowly this time, with Eleanor staying close to Kieran's side, she felt her wolf's mood shift from exhilaration to chastened understanding. The wild was freedom, but it was also danger. She wasn't ready to face it alone yet. But she would be. She'd train and practice and learn until she could defend herself against any challenge, because Eleanor Garza had come too far to let a few aggressive wolves scare her off. Chapter 8. The Trials. The week of recovery and training passed in a blur of transformations and combat practice. Eleanor learned to shift between forms at will, though it still took concentration and effort. She practiced mental communication with Kieran until she could project simple thoughts and emotions. She sparred with Clara and other pack members in both human and wolf form, her combat skills improving daily as her wolf's instincts merged with human strategy. And through it all, the mate bond pulled stronger. Every moment with Kieran was torture and ecstasy combined. Her wolf recognized him as hers and demanded completion of the bond. The urge to let him mark her, to finish what they'd started, grew stronger each day, but they'd agreed to wait. The trials came first. On the morning of the first trial, Eleanor stood in the clearing behind the house with the entire pack assembled to witness. 300 wolves in human form, all watching to see if she was worthy of joining them. Franklin stepped forward to explain the trials. As the eldest council member, tradition dictated he oversee the proceedings. "Eleanor Garza," he announced formally, "you stand before this pack as a candidate for full membership. You have awakened your wolf and claim the right to run with us. 3 trials stand between you and acceptance. Are you prepared to face them?" "I am," Eleanor said, proud that her voice didn't shake. "The first trial is the hunt. You will track and bring down prey in wolf form, demonstrating your ability to provide for the pack. You will hunt alone, with no assistance. Do you accept this trial?" "I accept." "The second trial is the challenge. You will face 3 pack members in combat, proving your strength and skill. These fights will be to submission, not death, but they will not be gentle. Do you accept this trial?" Eleanor's stomach clenched, but she kept her expression neutral. "I accept." "The third trial is the declaration. You will stand before the pack and speak the oath of loyalty, binding yourself to pack law and alpha authority. This oath is unbreakable. Once spoken, you are pack for life. Do you accept this trial?" "I accept." Franklin nodded, something like approval flickering in his ice-blue eyes. "Then let the trials begin. For the hunt, you have until sundown to bring down a deer. The pack will track you from a distance to verify the kill is yours alone. Shift and begin when ready." Eleanor stripped off her clothes. She'd learned quickly that modesty had no place in wolf culture and shifted. The transformation was smoother now, taking only seconds instead of minutes. She stood on 4 paws, her white fur bright in the morning sun, and looked to Kieran one last time. "You've got this," he projected confidently. "Trust your wolf. She knows what to do. Eleanor turned and ran into the forest. Hunting as a wolf was nothing like hunting as a human. There were no weapons, no tools, no logical strategy. Just instinct and patience, and the primal understanding of predator and prey. Eleanor caught the scent of deer within the first mile, a small herd moving through the underbrush. Her wolf knew immediately which one to target. A young buck, separated slightly from the others. Not the easiest prey, but challenging enough to prove her worth. She circled downwind, moving silently through the trees. Her white fur should have made stealth impossible, but her wolf knew how to use shadows and stillness to remain invisible. She crept closer, every muscle coiled and ready. The buck's head lifted, nostrils flaring. He'd sensed something but couldn't identify the threat. Eleanor froze, barely breathing, waiting for him to relax his guard. When he lowered his head to graze again, she struck. The chase was brutal and exhilarating. The buck was fast, crashing through the forest with Eleanor hot on his heels. Her wolf reveled in the pursuit, in the perfect clarity of hunter and hunted. No human complications, no fear or doubt, just the ancient dance of survival. Eleanor caught him at the edge of a stream. Her jaws closed around his throat, and she felt the moment life left him. Her wolf wanted to feed immediately, but the human part of her mind held back. This wasn't just about killing. It was about bringing the prey back to the pack. She dragged the buck's body back toward the clearing, the effort immense even with wolf strength. By the time she reached the assembled pack, the sun had moved maybe 2 hours across the sky. She'd completed the hunt in record time. Eleanor dropped the deer at Franklin's feet and shifted back to human form, breathing hard but triumphant. "Acceptable," Franklin said, which from him was high praise. The kill was clean and the prey suitable. "You passed the first trial." He paused, then added more quietly, "Well done." The pack erupted in howls of approval. Eleanor felt a surge of pride and belonging that nearly overwhelmed her. She'd done it. She'd proven she could hunt, could provide. "Rest and eat," Franklin instructed. "The challenge begins at noon." Kieran appeared with a robe, wrapping it around her shoulders. "I'm so proud of you," he murmured against her ear. "That was a perfect hunt." "The easy part's done," Eleanor said, watching as several pack members began preparing her kill for a communal meal. "Now comes the hard part." The challenge was held in a large training circle cleared of obstacles. Eleanor stood in the center in human form, waiting to see who her opponents would be. "Your first challenge," Franklin announced, "will be Luisa Gonzalez." Eleanor's trainer stepped into the circle, and despite everything they'd been through together, the look in Luisa's eyes was pure predator. This wouldn't be a training session. This would be real combat. "To submission or yield," Franklin reminded them. "Begin." Luisa didn't waste time with posturing. She attacked immediately, testing Eleanor's reflexes with a series of strikes that would have overwhelmed her a week ago. But Eleanor had trained for this, had learned to anticipate attacks and counter them. She blocked, dodged, and looked for openings. Found one when Luisa overextended on a kick. Eleanor grabbed her leg and twisted, using Luisa's own momentum to throw her off balance. They went down together, grappling for position. Luisa was stronger and more experienced. She should have won easily. But Eleanor had something Luisa didn't, a wolf that was fighting for its place in the pack. Her wolf lent her strength beyond what her human body should possess, pushing her past normal limits. They fought for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes. Eleanor gained the upper hand briefly, then lost it. Gained it again. The pack watched in silence, witnessing a fight that was more evenly matched than anyone had expected. Finally, Eleanor managed to get Luisa in a chokehold. Not enough to truly hurt her, but enough to make the point. Luisa could break free with wolf strength, but that would mean shifting, and tradition dictated the first fight be in human form. "Yield," Luisa gasped. Eleanor released her immediately, offering a hand to help her up. Luisa took it, and for the first time since they'd met, she smiled with genuine warmth. "You earned that," Luisa said quietly. "Welcome to the pack, sister." The casual use of sister sent warmth flooding through Eleanor's chest. She'd passed another test, not just in skill, but in Luisa's eyes. "Your second challenge," Franklin called out, will be Simon Watts. Kieran's beta stepped into the circle, his expression apologetic but determined. Nothing personal, he said. But I can't go easy on you. The pack needs to see you can hold your own. I wouldn't want you to go easy, Eleanor replied, settling back into fighting stance. Simon was faster than Louisa. Where Louisa had been direct and powerful, Simon was strategic and unpredictable. He'd been beta for decades and knew every trick in the book. He used them all on Eleanor, pushing her to adapt constantly. This fight she didn't win cleanly. They reached a stalemate after several minutes of brutal exchanges, both breathing hard and covered in bruises. Finally, Franklin called it draw. Both fighters demonstrated adequate skill. The trial continues. Eleanor had hoped for a break, but Franklin immediately announced her third opponent. Your final challenge will be in wolf form. Your opponent is Benny Forbes. A massive gray wolf padded into the circle. He was easily twice Eleanor's size, with scars crisscrossing his muzzle that spoke of many fights won. Eleanor's stomach dropped. She was supposed to fight that? Shift. Kieran's voice entered her mind. Trust your instincts. Size isn't everything. Eleanor shifted, her white wolf form looking tiny compared to Benny's bulk. Around the circle, she heard pack members placing bets. Most were betting against her. The fight began. Benny came at her like a freight train, and Eleanor quickly realized her only advantage was speed. She couldn't match his strength, so she didn't try. Instead, she darted in and out, landing quick strikes and dodging his more powerful attacks. It was exhausting. Every movement had to be perfect or she'd be crushed beneath his weight. Her wolf's instincts screamed at her to submit to the larger male, but Eleanor's human determination refused. She'd come too far to give up now. She noticed Benny favoring his left side slightly, an old injury that hadn't fully healed. Eleanor focused her attacks there. Quick bites that weren't deep but accumulated into real damage. Benny grew frustrated, his attacks becoming wilder, less controlled. That's when Eleanor saw her opening. She feinted left, then dove right as Benny lunged. His momentum carried him past her, and she was on his back before he could recover, jaws locked around his throat in the kill position. She didn't bite down. Didn't need to. The message was clear: she could have killed him if this were a real fight. Benny went still beneath her, then tipped his head in submission. The pack exploded in howls and cheers. Eleanor released Benny and stepped back, hardly believing she'd won. She'd beaten all three challengers. She'd passed the challenge. Incredible. Kieran's voice in her mind was full of pride and something deeper. You were magnificent. Eleanor shifted back to human form, accepting the robe someone offered. Every muscle in her body screamed with exhaustion, and she was pretty sure she'd cracked a rib during the fight with Benny, but she'd done it. The challenge is past, Franklin announced. Eleanor Garza has proven her strength and skill. Only one trial remains. The declaration was held that evening, with the entire pack gathered in ceremonial formation. Kieran stood at the center in his role as alpha, wearing formal robes Eleanor had never seen before. The weight of centuries of tradition hung heavy in the air. Eleanor approached him and knelt, as tradition dictated. Around her, the pack was silent, witnessing this moment that would bind her to them forever. Eleanor Garza, Kieran said formally, his voice carrying to every corner of the gathering. You have hunted and proven you can provide. You have fought and proven your strength. Now you must speak the oath that will make you pack. Will you swear loyalty to this pack, to its laws and its alpha, for all the days of your life? I will, Eleanor said clearly. Speak the words. Eleanor had memorized the oath during her week of preparation. She spoke each word carefully, feeling the weight of them as they left her lips. I swear by moon and blood, by fang and claw, to honor this pack above all others, to defend my pack mates with my life, to uphold pack law and respect alpha authority, to share in the pack's joys and burdens. From this day until my last breath, I am pack, I am wolf, I am home. As the final word left her mouth, Eleanor felt something shift. Magic settled over her like a cloak, binding her to every wolf present. She gasped at the sensation. Suddenly she could feel the pack. Not their individual thoughts, but their collective presence. She was connected to all of them in a way that went beyond words. "Rise, Eleanor Garza," Kieran said, and there was emotion thick in his voice. "Rise as pack, rise as wolf, rise as one of us." Eleanor stood, and the pack howled a sound of welcome and acceptance that echoed through the forest. She'd done it. She'd passed all 3 trials. She was pack. Kieran pulled her into his arms, and Eleanor felt his control finally crack. He buried his face in her neck, breathing deeply, his body trembling with restraint. "Mine," he growled, so quietly only she could hear. "You're mine now. Pack and mate and everything. Say you'll complete the bond. Say you'll let me claim you." Eleanor's wolf surged forward at his words, demanding she say yes immediately. But she pulled back enough to look at his face, to see the desperate need in his eyes. "Yes," she breathed. "Yes to all of it. Claim me, Kieran. Make me yours." The pack erupted in fresh howls of celebration, but Eleanor barely heard them. All her attention was focused on Kieran, as he swept her into his arms and carried her away from the gathering toward his private quarters where they could finally complete what had been building between them since that first night in the forest. The mate bond was waiting, and neither of them could wait any longer. Eleanor barely registered the journey to Kieran's quarters. Everything had narrowed to the feeling of his arms around her, the heat of his body against hers, the promise in his eyes that made her wolf howl with anticipation. He set her down in a room she'd never seen before, his private bedroom, she realized. It was simpler than she'd expected. A large bed dominated the space, but otherwise the room was sparse, functional. Like he'd never bothered to make it a home, because he'd had no one to share it with. "Last chance to change your mind," Kieran said, but his voice was rough with need and they both knew she wouldn't back out now. "I'm not changing my mind." Eleanor moved closer, eliminating the space between them. "I want this. Want you. Want us." Kieran made a sound that was half growl, half groan, and claimed her mouth in a kiss that burned away any remaining doubts. This wasn't the gentle kiss they'd shared before. This was claiming, possessive, desperate. Eleanor kissed him back with equal fervor, her hands fisting in his shirt. She felt his control hanging by a thread, felt his wolf pushing to the surface, demanding he mark what was his. The claiming bite, Kieran managed between kisses. "It has to be during—" "I know," Eleanor interrupted. Daisy explained everything. "Kieran, stop talking and claim me already." His laugh was breathless. "Demanding little wolf. You're demanding little wolf." "Yes," he agreed fiercely. "Mine." What followed was a blur of sensation and need. Clothes disappeared. Hands explored newly claimed territory. Eleanor felt the mate bond pulling tighter with every touch, every kiss, every whispered word. When Kieran finally sank his teeth into the junction of her neck and shoulder, the pain and pleasure hit simultaneously. Eleanor cried out as the bond snapped completely into place, a golden thread connecting them so thoroughly she couldn't tell where she ended and he began. She felt his emotions flooding into her, relief and joy, and possessive satisfaction, and love so deep it stole her breath. And she knew he felt hers too. Knew he could sense her complete certainty that this was right, that they were meant to be exactly here, exactly like this. "Mine." Kieran's voice in her mind was clearer than ever before. "My mate. My wolf. My everything. Yours," Eleanor agreed. "Always yours." The rest of the night passed in a haze of discovery and connection. Learning each other's bodies. Learning the bond that now tied them together for life. Learning what it meant to be not just 2 individuals, but mated wolves whose souls had been joined by magic older than civilization. When Eleanor finally fell asleep, curled against Kieran's chest with his arms wrapped around her and his mark fresh on her shoulder, she felt complete in a way she'd never experienced before. She'd found her pack, found her strength, found her home, and most importantly, she'd found her mate. Chapter 9. Luna rising. Eleanor woke to sensation overload. Every sound was amplified: birds outside, pack members moving through distant rooms, the steady rhythm of Kieran's heartbeat beneath her ear. Every scent was a story: pine and earth, and the musk of their mating, coffee brewing somewhere downstairs, the morning dew on leaves outside, and underneath it all, the bond. She could feel Kieran even before she opened her eyes. His contentment, his protectiveness, the bone-deep satisfaction of finally having claimed his mate. It was overwhelming and perfect all at once. "I can feel you thinking," Kieran murmured, his voice still rough with sleep. "The bond is intense at first. It'll settle as you adjust to it." Eleanor lifted her head to look at him. In the morning light, with his dark hair mussed and his guard completely down, he looked younger. Less like an ancient alpha and more like a man who'd finally found happiness. "I can feel everything you're feeling," she said wonderfully. "Your emotions are just there. Is it like this for you too?" "Even stronger. Probably. My wolf has been going insane since the moment we bonded." He traced the claiming mark on her shoulder gently. "How does it feel? Is it too painful?" "It throbs a little, but it's not bad." Eleanor touched the mark, feeling the raised edges of teeth imprints. "It's permanent?" "Completely. Every wolf who sees it will know you're claimed. That you're mine and under my protection." His eyes flashed gold briefly. "And if any male is stupid enough to challenge that, they'll answer to me." A knock at the door interrupted them. "Alpha." Simon's voice called from the hallway. "Sorry to disturb, but the pack is gathering for the Luna ceremony. They're waiting for you both." Eleanor's stomach dropped. "Luna ceremony? You're the Alpha's mate now." Kieran explained, sitting up. "That makes you Luna the female leader of the pack. There's a formal ceremony to acknowledge your new position. It's tradition. No one mentioned this yesterday. Because you had enough to worry about with the trials." He kissed her forehead. "It's mostly symbolic. The pack welcomes you as Luna. You accept the position. Everyone celebrates. Simple." Eleanor suspected nothing involving werewolf tradition was truly simple. But she nodded. "Okay. Give me 10 minutes to make myself presentable." 30 minutes later, it turned out looking presentable after becoming Luna took longer than 10 minutes. Eleanor descended the stairs to find the main hall packed with wolves. They'd all witnessed the trials yesterday, but seeing them assembled like this, waiting to acknowledge her as their Luna, made the reality hit hard. She was about to become the female leader of over 300 werewolves. Her, Eleanor Garza, who'd been running for her life less than 2 weeks ago. "You can do this." Kieran's voice in her mind was steady and confident. "I'm right beside you." The ceremony itself was beautiful. The pack formed a circle around Eleanor and Kieran, and Franklin, in his role as eldest council member, spoke words in that ancient language that seemed to make the air itself vibrate with power. "The Alpha has chosen his mate," Franklin said, switching to English. "The bond is complete. Does any wolf challenge this union?" Silence. Eleanor felt relief wash through her. "Then let the pack acknowledge Eleanor Garza as Luna." "Luna, do you accept the responsibilities of your position? To guide the pack alongside your Alpha? To protect the weak and counsel the strong? To serve as mother to all pack members who need you?" Mother to the pack. Eleanor hadn't thought about that aspect. She glanced at Kieran, who gave her an encouraging nod. "I accept," Eleanor said, hoping her voice didn't shake. "Then by moon and blood, by fang and claw, I name you Luna of Shadowpine Pack. May your rule be long and your wisdom deep." The pack howled their acceptance, and Eleanor felt the same magic that had bound her to the pack yesterday shift. She wasn't just a pack member anymore. She was Luna. The bond that connected her to every wolf intensified, and suddenly she could feel them all more clearly. Their hopes, their concerns, their curiosity about their new, inexperienced Luna. "Breathe," Kieran murmured beside her. "The pack bond is stronger for the Luna. You'll learn to manage it with time." The celebration that followed was overwhelming in the best way. Pack members approached to formally welcome her, offer congratulations, and in some cases present gifts. Clara gave her a beautiful journal with a wolf carved on the cover. Louisa presented a set of knives with an instruction manual on pack defense tactics. Even Franklin approached with a leather-bound book of pack law and history. "You'll need this," he said gruffly. "A Luna should know the pack's story." "Thank you, Franklin." Eleanor accepted the book, genuinely touched. "I know you had reservations about me. About us. Thank you for giving me a chance." His ice blue eyes softened slightly. You proved yourself worthy. That's all I ever wanted, for our alpha to choose someone strong enough to stand beside him. You've exceeded my expectations, Luna." As the afternoon wore on, Eleanor found herself pulled into conversations with various pack members. She learned names and histories, heard about pack traditions and celebrations, started to understand the complex web of relationships that made up their community. She was talking with Stacy about the upcoming full moon run when she felt a spike of alarm through the bond. Not from Kieran directly, but from the pack itself. Multiple wolves reacting to something. Eleanor turned to find Kieran speaking with Simon near the entrance, both their expressions grim. Through the bond, she felt Kieran's sudden tension and barely restrained anger. "What's wrong?" she projected at him. "We have a visitor at the territory border," Kieran replied mentally. "Someone demanding to speak with you specifically." "Me? Who would?" Eleanor froze as understanding crashed over her. "No. He couldn't have found me." "Who?" "Eleanor?" She didn't need to answer. Kieran plucked the name from her surface thoughts through their bond. Derek. Her abusive ex-boyfriend had somehow tracked her all the way to Shadowpine territory and was demanding to see her. The party atmosphere died as pack members sensed their alpha and Luna's distress. Kieran's power filled the room, making everyone stop and look. "Simon, Vernon, Jen with me," Kieran ordered. "Luna, stay here where you're protected." "Absolutely not." Eleanor moved toward him, her fear transforming into anger. "If Derek is here, I need to face him. I need to end this once and for all. It could be dangerous. If he's found you, he might have come with backup. Humans with guns. Then we deal with them." Eleanor interrupted. "But I'm not hiding anymore, Kieran. I'm Luna of this pack. I'm your mate. And I'm done letting Derek Chen make me afraid." She felt Kieran's internal war through the bond, his wolf demanding he protect her versus his understanding that she needed to do this herself. Finally, he nodded. "You stay behind me. If things get violent, you shift and let the pack handle it." "Agreed." "Agreed." The walk to the territory border was tense. Eleanor could feel Kieran's controlled fury through the bond, knew he was fighting every instinct that demanded he simply kill the threat to his mate. But this was human business, and killing Derek would bring the exact kind of attention the pack had spent centuries avoiding. They found Derek waiting at the edge of Shadowpine territory, exactly where the magical wards prevented humans from entering. He looked exactly as Eleanor remembered, tall, handsome, with dark hair, and the kind of smile that had once made her heart race. Now it just made her sick. He wasn't alone. 3 men stood with him, all wearing hunting gear and carrying rifles. They looked uncomfortable, shifting nervously as they stared at the forest that seemed to reject their presence. "Eleanor." Derek's face lit up when he saw her. "Thank God. I've been so worried about you." The concerned boyfriend act was so familiar it was almost nauseating. Eleanor stepped forward, putting herself slightly ahead of Kieran despite his growl of protest. "How did you find me?" she demanded. "Your credit card. You used it at a gas station about 40 miles from here." Derek took a step forward, and immediately the wolves behind Eleanor growled in warning. He froze, seeming to truly notice them for the first time. "Who are these people? Eleanor, are you okay? Did they kidnap you? Because I've got help, we can get you out of here safely." "I'm exactly where I want to be," Eleanor said coldly. "I left you, Derek. On purpose. Because you're abusive and controlling, and dangerous." His expression shifted, the mask of concern cracking to reveal anger underneath. "Don't be dramatic. We had a fight. Couples fight. That doesn't mean you run away and hide in the woods with a bunch of strangers. You put me in the hospital. You fell. And I apologized for that. I've been apologizing for weeks, calling everyone we know, trying to find you." Derek's voice took on that wheedling tone she remembered so well. "Come on, baby. Let's talk about this privately. Just you and me." "She's not going anywhere with you," Kieran said, his voice like ice. "Eleanor has made her choice clear. You need to leave." Derek's eyes narrowed as he assessed Kieran. "And who are you? Her new boyfriend?" That was fast. "We've only been broken up for 3 weeks? Already shacked up with some backwoods." Watch yourself, Kieran interrupted, and there was something in his tone that made even Derek's armed companions take a step back. You're on private property, making threats to my mate. The only reason you're still standing is because Eleanor deserves the closure of telling you herself that it's over, so listen carefully to what she says next. Eleanor felt strength flow through the mate bond Kieran supporting her without overshadowing her. She took a breath and met Derek's eyes. We're done. Permanently. You don't get to come here and try to manipulate me back. You don't get to pretend you were a good boyfriend who made one mistake. You isolated me from my friends. You controlled my finances. You tracked my every movement, and when I tried to leave, you beat me so badly I couldn't walk for 2 days. Her voice was steady, clear. I'm not that scared girl anymore. I've found people who actually care about me, who make me strong instead of making me weak. So take your fake concern and your hired thugs and get out. If you ever come near me again, you'll regret it. Derek's mask shattered completely. His handsome face twisted into something ugly. You ungrateful bitch. Do you have any idea how much I've invested in you? How much time I wasted trying to make you into someone worth being with? And this is how you repay me? Leave, Kieran said, and power rolled off him in waves that made Derek and his companions stumble backward. Now. This isn't over, Derek snarled, but he was retreating. You can't hide in the woods forever, Eleanor. Eventually you'll have to come back to civilization, and when you do, he didn't finish the threat because Kieran shifted. One moment he was standing in human form. The next, a massive black wolf stood in his place, lips pulled back in a snarl that showed every tooth. The display of impossible transformation sent Derek's companions scrambling backward in terror. What the? Derek's voice cracked. That's not that can't. Eleanor shifted too, her white wolf form appearing beside Kieran's black. Around them, the other wolves shifted as well, until Derek was facing a pack of very large, very dangerous predators instead of a group of humans. The message was clear. Eleanor wasn't just protected. She was pack, and the pack didn't surrender their own to anyone. Monsters. One of Derek's companions gasped. They're monsters. Run, Derek said, his bravado evaporating. Run. They ran. Eleanor watched them crash back through the forest, their terrified shouts fading into the distance. She felt satisfaction from her wolf. The threat had been driven off. She was safe. Once Derek and his men were gone, the pack shifted back to human form. Kieran immediately pulled Eleanor into his arms. Are you all right? He asked. I'm perfect. And surprisingly, she was. Facing Derek without fear, watching him run from her instead of the other way around, it felt like closing a door on her old life permanently. He's never going to stop looking for me, is he? Probably not. Kieran's expression was grim. Men like that don't handle rejection well. But he won't find you again. We'll make sure of it. How? There are ways to make someone forget, Daisy said, stepping forward. She'd been among the wolves who'd come to the border. Memory magic. I could find him and his companions. Remove their memories of this place. They'd remember you left, but not where you went. It would solve the problem without violence. Eleanor considered this. Part of her wanted Derek to remember, to live with the fear of what he'd seen. But the practical part knew that was dangerous for the pack. Do it, she said finally. Make them forget. End this. Daisy nodded. I'll need a tracking party. Jen, Vernon, you're with me. We'll handle this tonight. As Daisy left to prepare, Eleanor leaned into Kieran's warmth. Through the bond, she felt his pride in how she'd handled the confrontation, his relief that she was safe, his fierce determination that no one would ever threaten her again. I love you, she projected at him, the words flowing naturally through their connection. Kieran pulled back to look at her, his eyes bright. Say it out loud. I love you, Eleanor repeated, speaking the words for the first time. I should have said it before, but everything was moving so fast and I was scared and… He kissed her, silencing her rambling. When he finally pulled back, his smile was radiant. I love you too, he said. My brave, stubborn, perfect mate. You faced down your worst fear and didn't even flinch. I had you beside me. You would have been fine without me. But I'm grateful I got to be there. He took her hand. Come on. Let's go back to the celebration. Your first crisis as Luna, successfully handled. That deserves recognition. The pack welcomed them back with renewed enthusiasm. News of what happened had spread quickly, and Eleanor found herself receiving congratulations not just for the Luna ceremony, but for how she'd dealt with Derek. You're already proving to be a strong Luna, Franklin said, approaching with something that might have been a smile. The pack chose well. As evening fell and the celebration continued, Eleanor found herself on the balcony overlooking the forest. Kieran joined her, wrapping his arms around her from behind. What are you thinking? He asked. That 2 weeks ago, I was running for my life. Now I'm Luna of a werewolf pack, mated to an alpha king, and I just watched my abusive ex run screaming from me in terror. She laughed. My life has become completely insane. Regrets? Eleanor turned in his arms to face him. Not even one. This is exactly where I'm supposed to be. With me. With you. With the pack. With this life we're building together. She kissed him softly. I'm home, Kieran. For the first time in my life, I'm actually home. The bond flared between them, carrying their love and commitment and hope for the future. Around them, the pack celebrated, and in the forest beyond, the shadow pine whispered its approval. Eleanor Garza had found her place in the world, and she would fight tooth and claw to keep it. Chapter 10, Epilogue, Full Circle. 2 years later, Eleanor stood at the edge of the sacred clearing where Kieran had first found her, one hand resting on her swollen belly as she watched the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson. The forest had changed in subtle ways over the past 2 years, or maybe she had changed, and now saw it differently through wolf eyes. Behind her, she heard familiar footsteps. Without turning, she knew it was Kieran. The mate bond told her everything, his contentment, his anticipation, the ever-present protectiveness that had only intensified since they'd learned she was pregnant. You shouldn't be out here alone, he said, though his tone held no real reproach. They'd had this argument dozens of times in the past few months. I'm not alone. I have our daughter keeping me company. Eleanor patted her belly, feeling the cub move inside her. Besides, Clara is watching from the tree line, and Louisa is probably hidden somewhere with a crossbow in case a threatening butterfly appears. Kieran laughed, wrapping his arms around her from behind and resting his hands over hers on her stomach. Can you blame me for being protective? You're carrying the first shadow pine heir in over a century. And you've been impossible about it. But Eleanor leaned back into his warmth, content despite her teasing. The pack is taking bets on whether she'll shift early like you did or late like most cubs. I'm betting on early. She's already strong. I can feel her wolf through the bond sometimes. He nuzzled Eleanor's neck, breathing in her scent. How are you feeling? Any pain? Just the usual aches. Daisy says she could come any day now. Eleanor turned in his arms to face him. Are you nervous? Terrified, Kieran admitted. What if I'm a terrible father? What if I don't know what to do? Then we'll figure it out together, just like we've figured out everything else. Eleanor cupped his face. You're going to be an amazing father, Kieran. Our daughter is lucky to have you. Through the bond, she felt his anxiety ease, replaced by love and gratitude. 2 years of being mated, and the bond still took her breath away sometimes with its intensity. Do you ever think about that first night? Eleanor asked. When you found me sleeping here and decided to watch over me instead of sending me away, every day. Kieran's expression grew distant with memory. I thought I was just ensuring you weren't a threat. But my wolf knew the truth from the beginning. You were going to change everything. For the better, I hope. Immeasurably better. He pressed a kiss to her forehead. You brought life back to this pack. Joy. Hope. Things we'd forgotten we were missing. Movement at the tree line caught Eleanor's attention. Clara emerged, followed by Stacy and several young wolves Eleanor had been training. Over the past year, she'd taken on the role of mentor to new pack members, teaching them what Louisa had taught her: control, strength, confidence. Sorry to interrupt, Luna, Clara called out. But Franklin is looking for you both. Something about the council needing to discuss the full moon ceremony. Eleanor groaned. The ceremony isn't for another week. What could possibly need discussing now? You know, Franklin. He likes everything planned down to the minute detail. Clara grinned. Also, Daisy sent me to tell you that if you don't come eat dinner soon, she's going to track you down herself. Apparently, pregnant Lunas need proper nutrition. Everyone in this pack is so bossy, Eleanor grumbled, but she was smiling as she let Kieran help her back toward the house. The mansion had grown over the 2 years. New wings had been added to accommodate pack members who'd moved closer to the Alpha's residence. The library had expanded. The training facilities had been upgraded. Everywhere Eleanor looked, she saw evidence of a pack that was thriving instead of just surviving. Dinner was a chaotic affair, as always. The dining hall was packed with wolves, all talking and laughing and sharing their day's events. Eleanor had learned that meals were sacred to the pack, a time to reinforce bonds and share in community. She was halfway through her plate when a sharp pain made her gasp. Kieran was on his feet instantly, his alpha power flooding the room. "Eleanor?" "I'm fine," she started to say. Then another contraction hit. Stronger this time. "Okay, maybe not fine. I think the cub decided dinner time was a good time to be born." The dining hall erupted in controlled chaos. Daisy appeared seemingly from nowhere, barking orders. Clara and Louisa moved to support Eleanor on either side. Kieran looked ready to panic, his usual composure completely shattered. "Breathe, Alpha," Daisy said firmly. "This is a natural process. Your mate needs you calm, not frantic." "Right, calm. I can do calm." But Kieran's hands were shaking as he helped Eleanor toward the birthing room that had been prepared weeks ago. The labor lasted through the night. Eleanor had thought awakening her wolf was painful. Childbirth proved her wrong. This was a different kind of agony, made worse by the fact that she couldn't shift to ease the pain without risking the cub. But Kieran stayed beside her through all of it, let her crush his hand during contractions, murmured encouragement when she was certain she couldn't continue, shared his strength through the mate bond when her own faltered. As dawn broke, filling the room with soft golden light, Eleanor's daughter entered the world with a fierce cry that promised she'd inherited her parents' stubborn strength. "She's perfect," Daisy said, cleaning the squirming infant and wrapping her in soft blankets. 10 fingers, 10 toes, and a set of lungs that will serve her well. "Congratulations, Luna." Eleanor held her daughter for the first time and felt her heart expand in ways she hadn't known were possible. The cub, tiny and red-faced and beautiful, stopped crying the moment Eleanor touched her, as if recognizing her mother's scent. "Hello, little one," Eleanor whispered. "Welcome to the pack." Kieran leaned over them both, his expression awed. "She's so small." "All cubs are small, Alpha," Daisy said with amusement. "She'll grow quickly enough, especially with that bloodline." "What should we name her?" Kieran asked, gently touching one tiny fist. Eleanor had been thinking about this for months. "Amara. It means eternal in some languages, because she represents the future proof that the pack will endure." "Amara," Kieran repeated softly. "Amara Silvershade. It's perfect." Through the bond, Eleanor felt his overwhelming love for her, for their daughter, for the life they'd built together. She felt the same emotions reflected back at him, strengthened by the tiny life they'd created. A soft knock at the door announced visitors. Simon poked his head in, his usual serious expression softened by genuine joy. "The pack is waiting to meet the heir," he said, "but only if Luna feels up to it." "Give us a few minutes," Kieran replied, "then you can let them in. Small groups only, I don't want her overwhelmed." Over the next hour, pack members filed through to offer congratulations and gifts. Franklin presented a hand-carved cradle that had belonged to Kieran's father. Louisa brought a set of tiny training daggers, insisting it was never too early to start defense education. Clara and Stacy arrived together with a quilt they'd made, each square embroidered with symbols representing different pack families. "So everyone has a piece of them watching over her," Clara explained. "It's tradition for the Alpha's heir." Eleanor was touched by each gift, by the genuine happiness radiating from the pack. Her daughter, their daughter, would grow up surrounded by love and protection, would never know the loneliness or fear that had defined so much of Eleanor's early life. As evening fell and the visitors finally departed, Eleanor lay in bed with Amara sleeping peacefully in the cradle beside her. Kieran sat in a chair nearby, unable to take his eyes off his daughter. "I still can't believe she's real," he said quietly. That we made something so perfect. She's going to be trouble, Eleanor predicted. With your stubbornness and my determination? The pack better prepare themselves. They're already preparing. I caught Franklin making lesson plans for when she's old enough to start learning pack law. Kieran smiled. He's going to be the world's most overbearing grandfather figure. He'll be perfect for the job. Eleanor yawned, exhaustion finally catching up with her. Come lie down with us. I want all my favorite people close tonight. Kieran needed no further encouragement. He carefully climbed into bed beside Eleanor, positioning himself so he could watch both his mate and his daughter. Through the bond, Eleanor felt his contentment, the kind of bone-deep satisfaction that came from having everything he'd ever wanted. Thank you, he said softly. For what? For collapsing in my forest that night. For being brave enough to stay. For choosing this life. This pack. Me. He kissed her temple. For giving me a future I'd stopped believing was possible. Eleanor reached across to take his hand. I should be thanking you. You saved me in every way that matters. Gave me strength, and a home, and a family. I never thought I'd have any of that. We saved each other, Kieran corrected. And we're going to build something amazing together, a pack that welcomes instead of hiding, that's strong enough to protect what matters without being cruel. Amara will grow up in a better world than either of us knew. She will, Eleanor agreed. Because we'll make sure of it. Outside, the full moon rose over Shadowpine Forest, bathing everything in silver light. The pack gathered in the clearing to run and hunt and celebrate the birth of their heir. Their howls echoed through the trees, a sound of joy and hope and promise. Eleanor closed her eyes, listening to the pack song, feeling Kieran's presence beside her and their daughter's soft breathing nearby. Through the mate bond, she sensed the pack's collective happiness. She was connected to all of them now, not just through magic, but through shared purpose and love. She thought about the terrified woman who'd collapsed in this forest 2 years ago. That woman had been running from everything, with nowhere to go and no one to turn to. She'd been broken and afraid, and certain her life would always be small and constrained by fear. That woman was gone. In her place was Eleanor Silvershade, Luna of Shadowpine Pack, mother, mate, warrior, leader. She'd fought for this life, earned it through trials and pain and determination, and she would defend it with everything she had. Because this was her pack, her family, her home, and she was finally, completely, perfectly, where she belonged. In the cradle beside the bed, Amara stirred and made a small sound. Eleanor reached over automatically, placing a gentle hand on her daughter's chest. The cub settled immediately, comforted by her mother's touch. Sleep, little one, Eleanor whispered. You're safe. You're loved. And you're going to grow up strong and brave and free. I promise you that. Through the window, she could see wolves running beneath the moonlight. Her pack, her people, all of them working together to build something that would last for generations. The Shadowpine had claimed her that first night, just as Kieran had claimed her. And in return, she'd claimed them right back, the forest, the pack, the impossible life that had saved her. Eleanor smiled and let sleep take her, secure in the knowledge that she would wake to a future full of possibility. The lost girl had found her way home. And the Luna had found her purpose. So, here's a question for you, dear viewers. If you had the chance to become something more than human, stronger, more powerful, but permanently changed, would you take it? Eleanor did, and it gave her everything she'd been searching for. Sometimes the most terrifying choices lead to the most beautiful transformations. If you enjoyed this journey, please hit that like button and tell me in the comments, what was your favorite moment? Eleanor's first shift? The trials? Or watching her face down Derek as a wolf? Thanks for watching, and may you find your own Shadowpine Forest a place where you finally become who you were meant to be.